Hey Nicole, can you hear us? Type in the chat maybe if you can hear us.
They were coming in person or online. So some's online, some.
Are they?
I'm supposed to help.
I can only hear you, Scott. You sound a little far away. Scott, can you hear me?
gosh.
You're on air, Mayor.
All right. I call the 2,355th meeting of the Milwaukie City Council to order. This meeting is being conducted in person at City Hall and video conference. The public may participate in this meeting by coming to City Hall, joining the Zoom webinar, or on the city's YouTube channel or Comcast cable channel 30 in city limits. There will be opportunities for the public to speak during the community comment time and during the public hearing. If you would like to address council, you may come to City Hall. Seating in chambers is limited, and speakers will be asked to leave after the part of the meeting you are interested in is finished. If you are interested in speaking, please let staff know by emailing ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov for those on Zoom, or by submitting a yellow comment card for those at City Hall. When it is time to take public comment, staff will monitor the comment cards, the email inbox, the Zoom participant list, and chat. We will take comments in the order that they are received and seen. Written comments may be emailed to ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov. The public may also participate in the Zoom webinar by phone by dialing 1-253-215-8782, entering webinar ID 831-866-90512 and passcode 023745. If you are calling in through Zoom and would like to make a comment, dial *9 to raise your hand. Spanish translation services are available upon request. The public is asked to request translation and other meeting accessibility services at least 48 hours before the meeting. Contamos con servicio de traducción al español cuando sea solicitado. Se pide al público que solicite servicios de traducción y otros servicios de accesibilidad para reuniones por lo menos 48 horas antes de la reunión. Translation services are also available in other languages. All right, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's interesting, post-pandemic, that's gotten a lot quieter. Not sure why that is. The City of Milwaukie respectfully acknowledges that our community is located on the ancestral homeland of the Clackamas people. In 1855, the surviving members of the Clackamas signed the Willamette Valley Treaty, also known as the Kalapuya, etc. Treaty, with the federal government in good faith. We offer our respect and gratitude to the indigenous people of this land. One of the big parts of tonight's hearing will be the tree code. The native folks who lived here before us did a whole lot better job managing their trees than we do. We have much to learn. All right, tonight's announcements. Have a voice in your local government by joining a board, committee, or commission. Applications will be accepted now through the first week of May, with interviews shortly thereafter. Join me on Thursday, April 7th at 5:30 p.m. for my last annual State of the City address. The address will highlight the city's recent accomplishments and goals for 2022. All are welcome to attend. The event will take place at the Ledding Library. Celebrate Earth Day by volunteering at a restoration event on Saturday, April 23rd from 9 to 11 a.m. The event will take place at Willow Place Natural Area in the Lake Road neighborhood. Participate in an upcoming Community Resources Fair in collaboration with the Community Services Network, Breakside Brewery, and participating partners. The event takes place on Saturday, April 30th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at Breakside's International Way location. The event includes much-needed resources like food boxes, employment opportunities, kids resources, hygiene kits, and more. All are welcome and everything is free. Bring your unused or expired prescription drugs and sensitive documents to be shredded to the Public Safety Building on Saturday, April 30th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. The annual event is hosted by the Milwaukie Police Department, the DEA, and the local Milwaukie CERT. Milwaukie has 7 neighborhood district associations, commonly referred to as NDAs, that meet regularly to hold vibrant discussions and carry out community building projects and events. If you live, own property, or a business, or represent a nonprofit in one of them, you are already a member. Each May, they hold elections for new leaders, and you are invited to participate. Positions include chair, vice chair, secretary, treasurer, land use committee members, and others. For more information about each of these events and others, please visit the city's homepage at milwaukieoregon.gov or call 503-786-7555, and staff will provide you with the information you need or connect you with someone who can help. Lisa has a couple more.
I do. This is not a city event, but I just wanted to help get the word out there. There's a class action lawsuit that's in settlement stages against Precision Cast Parts for pollution released from their plant on Johnson Creek Boulevard. People who want to opt into the settlement should have gotten mailers, but I just kind of wanted to reiterate, if you're eligible, and we're going to show a map in a minute, you only have until this Saturday to opt in or opt out if you choose to opt out. So that's the website and that's the phone number to call. They're estimating that families in the eligible area, or households in the eligible area, would get somewhere in the vicinity of $3,000 to $4,000. So I think we're not in the business, I'm certainly not in the business of advising people whether they should sign in or not. I don't think the city is in that, sees that as its role. We just want to get the information out there and make sure that people who might be in the eligible area know that and know to check. So and part of the reason is, so this is the map of the area. It's hard to see, but King Road cuts across it, like where you see Harmony Point down there on the far right. That's King Road. That's Bell Avenue further out there. So Linwood Avenue is further into the middle of it. All their materials said it was a settlement for residents in Southeast Portland. They never say anywhere on their website. Like half of the area is either Milwaukie or unincorporated Clackamas County, and yet all their materials talk about it like it's just Southeast Portland. So that's been one of my concerns, is that they're not reaching out enough in Milwaukie. So if you know anyone who lives in this area, which is a small part of, well, maybe not so small, parts of Ardenwald, Hector Campbell, Llewellyn, and Linwood neighborhoods, please let them know and get them to fill on. There's a form you fill online at that website to opt in. So thank you. Help spread the word.
Thanks for doing that. All right. Community comments. This is the part of the agenda during which council will hear community members' statements regarding city business. Those wishing to speak, please submit a yellow comment card if you are at City Hall, or email ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov, or raise your hand in Zoom, or write a comment in the Zoom chat to indicate you wish to speak. If you are calling in through Zoom and would like to make a comment, dial *9 to raise your hand. Before you make your comments, please state your name and city of residence for the record. If you would like the city to follow up with you, please submit your contact information to ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov. As council has other business items on the agenda this evening, speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each. Because information provided during the community comments may be new, The city manager will respond at the next council meeting to those comments that require follow-up. Before we begin, is there any follow-up from the March 15th community comments, Ms. Ober?
There is not. All of the comments were tied to the public hearings.
Okay, is there anybody here that's not part of the NDAs? So you guys get to talk next. Nope. Anything online?
You want to speak?
I was looking to write out a yellow card.
They're in the hall. We'll have one, Mr. Mayor. I don't see any email, or I don't see any, I see no hands raised in Zoom at the moment, and nothing in chat about commenting, but it looks like we have at least one speaker.
Okay.
Anybody else wants to speak, fill out a yellow card for general comment, not the NDA stuff. You too?
I don't have any yellow card or anything.
Get you one real quick.
I would comment that my hearing is not that great, and it would be good if people could speak up.
Thank you for the reminder. We need it.
Scott, are these mics still going to anything other than the TV?
Yes. We sound great on YouTube. A little shaky on Zoom.
But they're not helping us in this room.
Not in this room.
Okay.
So, reminded everyone to project when we're speaking. From the back.
The diaphragm.
Nice.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Rod, why don't you come on up?
Thank you. Please. Hello, my name is Rod Smith. Recently I've been working with the disabled, and clearly I had no time to meet with any of you in the last couple of years. That being said, and December 6th, Friday, December 6th, 2019, I spoke with a few individuals with my concerns of trees outside our lovely City Hall. These trees were infected with what you now know as black knot. As you can see, my card says, "Why was I ignored?" This does not deal directly with the trees themselves, because that ship has sailed. But what hasn't sailed is the fact that members of your constituents come to you with questions, with ideas, or even volunteering their time and labor and skill set to help rectify and fix problems around the city, and we are being ignored. When I discussed with Ann, or that the fungicide that could be used to totally wipe this fungicide off the trees cost $28.96, that I volunteered my time, and my brother, who is a certified arborist, and I have a degree in environmental science. I was stuck inside doing COVID too, but I'm pretty sure I was not going to infect a tree with my virus if I had one, which I did not, thank God. But that being said, this issue could have been dealt with $30. $30 back in 2018 when I found it, 2019 when I discussed it, again 2020, December 24th, right before Christmas, 2020, when I discussed that, hey, this is still ongoing. I explained possibility of dry lines coming in, causing these funguses to spread to other trees. I was ignored. Now, I know this means nothing to a lot of people, But again, a lot of the people who call themselves politicians in this room wonder why we don't come to you any longer, why we don't talk to you, why we want to tell you what's going on with our neighborhoods, and we get totally ignored. This could have been dealt with 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 1 year ago. I had a team of friends who, all it cost, if you don't mind me being so bold, would win a 6-pack of beer and a fun Saturday night to remove this fungus. Just one incident, of multiple that has happened, that I've talked to neighbors, friends, who said they've come to the city council with not just complaints, but solutions, and been completely shut down because of the red tape between that door and this hollowed hall. I have no idea what I have to do to beg you to listen to us. When something as small as that fungus could have been eradicated, and now I would love to know how much it's going to cost me as a taxpayer, as the people in this room, how much is it going to cost us in man-hours labor and replanting these trees? And there are other problems in this city that I know that I can throw into the well and it will fall. And I come with solutions, but we are not heard. And it goes down to the planning we do about putting concrete, slathering it on like it's some sort of magic cure around here. And you don't know that you're killing your sequoias out here. You're killing them because you can see how they're leaning. You put trees near highways and wonder why the root balls inside, that's one of the nice terms, root balls die underneath and it leans towards the highway. It corrects itself. Please walk out there tonight and you're going to see the tree correcting itself. In 10 years or 20, when that tree falls and whatever news channel is flying his helicopter overhead asking how could this have happened? Well, I'm telling you, today, April 5th, 2022, I'm telling you, it's going to happen. But again, this means nothing, because I doubt there's a voice in here who will hear me tell you this. I loathe the fact that I am so despondent towards this council, which I have watched many of you grow to prominent positions and hopefully more so, and feel as though when I speak, it means little. Now, I will be going back to my family, my wife, my children, and will not watch this council because of my fear that I would just become irate and scream into the heavens. But I thought perhaps it would be worthy of my time to come down and express my disappointment and the fact that a wonderful tree that supposedly represents this fine city is going to be destroyed because no one wanted to do anything, even giving me the tip of the shoulder. Just go ahead and do it. I couldn't even get that. So, as much as I hope that you can continue this in a more civil manner once I leave, I feel that this is something that will raise its ugly head as it did in Portland and other cities around the nation where we're not heard. When you ask why it's happening, and you have the audacity to do so, it is small. It is a tree. But the tree has roots. And you want to know why? These are the roots that cause us the issues we have today. I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate your testimony. I fortunately don't recall the previous testimony from you about the trees.
I will leave the email too.
But I do want to explain to some degree, and Ann will comment further next week. And I know it's frustrating because I've been where you are, right? I was not always the mayor. I was not always on the city council. There are a lot of people in this town that can do a lot of things, that can solve a lot of problems. Cities are entities that have liabilities, that have staff, that have jobs, that are meant to cover most of those liabilities, to solve the problems. And so cities are often very uncomfortable having non-employed people doing things, right? We do events, we plant trees, we do things like that with volunteers. But beyond that, cities get very uncomfortable very fast. And it's unfortunate if that tree is dying and we knew about it 4 years ago. This is news to me. But if that gives you any...
About 15 trees sold.
And Mayor, normally we don't respond, but I would actually like to bring Natalie and Peter up because this has been within their portfolio. So,
Sure.
Natalie, you mind coming up? Thanks.
Thanks.
Good evening, Mayor Gamba and council members. I'm Peter Pastorelli, the Public Works Director, and tonight also with me is Natalie Rogers, our Climate and Natural Resources Manager. We do have, I think there's 9 trees that we have. Our urban forester has identified that they have this black knot fungus that's part of the issue, and based off of her evaluation, the trees are at the point where they will no longer be. They're at the point where they need to be removed. They're no longer thriving, and any treatment is not worth the time and the effort at this point. Courtney Wilson, our urban forester, joined us in August of last year, and noticed those trees and has been working on it and evaluating them to determine what the best course of action is. And based off of her judgment and where the trees are now, she felt like the trees needed to be removed. So, we have posted the removal and the permit and provided some information to the community about them, and so we're planning on removing those trees, I think this weekend, right?
Mm-hmm. April 9th.
And then we've got some more trees that we're going to be planting as well to replace those trees.
So out of curiosity, and you may not know the answer to this question, but had the fungicide been applied 4 years ago, could those trees have been saved?
At 4 years ago, the city did not have an urban forester on staff. We didn't have an ISA certified arborist. Our urban forest program is very new. Our landscaping technician actually became our urban forester with time and with further certifications. Black knot fungus, you need both severe corrective pruning as well as fungicide application, which, the chemicals themselves might not cost a lot. However, cordoning off the sidewalks, staff labor, potentially traffic control, depending on how you're needing to apply the fungicide, that could add up. Courtney said that was a possibility if we were wanting to really go that route, but just based on the high visibility of the trees right on our main street, based on some of the feedback from adjacent businesses and residents who had stopped our natural resource technician multiple times asking, when is the city going to remove these trees? As well as her experience doing the same exact thing and past private companies doing black knot treatment, she just thought that the resource investment that we would need to make in order to return the trees potentially to a healthy state, which was not a for sure thing, at this point was not worth the investment, and instead planting more climate adapted, more resilient urban trees would be better suited for those locations. We're hoping to take a more proactive approach in urban forestry in the future. I think that's a big part of some of the work that we've been doing in Milwaukie, is really making sure that we're getting eyes on trees as public investments and as public assets and infrastructure. So And that's why, a big thing of updating our public tree code just recently was to really show the valuation of these trees. But really, 4 years ago, I don't even think I was at the city at that point. And we just didn't have a team who was really watching out in detail for things like this. And now, hopefully, we do, and we are. So it's an unfortunate saga for those trees, and I don't know what would have happened if fungicide was applied sooner. But at this point, just looking at the resource allocation required to do treatment, it just didn't pencil out.
Do we have like a hotline for folks to call in and say, hey, there's a tree that we think might have this problem?
Absolutely. So folks who have tree questions, concerns, if they want to raise awareness, we do have a urban forest phone line. That's 503-786-7655. They can also email urbanforest@milwaukieoregon.gov or visit milwaukeeoregon.gov/trees, and that has our urban forest information on there. We're also happy to work with homeowners and property owners and renters, anyone who has concerns around trees. Particularly as we're looking at our private tree code, we want to make ourselves a resource for the community. And I will say too, we do have a community advisory board, our tree board, that folks can also attend tree board meetings monthly and talk to our tree board and raise concerns there as well.
I will note on the city's Facebook page when this notice was posted. I will note that on the city's Facebook page, when there was this notice about the tree removal, I did see a comment in the fields below that there is a tree suffering from the same thing along the trolley trail. So I don't know how that would be NCPRD's responsibility, I guess, but it would be good if that comment could be relayed to them so that they have a look at that. I guess it's near the Park Avenue station along the trolley trail. And I will just add that I have successfully treated black knot fungus on trees in my yard. So it can be done if you get on it early enough.
Thanks. Philip.
Okay, I'm all for trees, but I'm not real crazy about this tree ordinance that's coming up. Some trees that are real close to a house could actually fall on the house and harm or kill you. Why would you not just pass some kind of a thing that would say, we encourage people to plant more trees on their property, instead of, we're going to do this, you're going to pay a fine or whatever if you touch your tree or whatever you want to call it. I don't think the founding fathers would like that, as far as liberty. But then I also have another issue. That's 42nd Street. I don't know if you're aware of what they did on 42nd Street. They built these concrete things sticking out into the street. And 42nd Street's a narrow street anyway. People are going to run into it. I don't care what anyone says. If I was on the safety committee, that would have never happened. Am I going to have to join the safety committee to stop some of this stuff? I mean, these things, they're not just, there's no bike lane. They're just sticking out there. I think 2 different spots. People are going to run into that. At nighttime, you can't see that. As my twin brother would say, a bad idea perfectly executed. Okay, those are my comments. Thank you.
Sorry, I just wanted to confirm, you were talking about the bulb outs on 42nd Avenue, correct?
Right.
I was out there looking at them today. I'll give you a call after this.
Yeah, it's a disaster waiting to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else in the room or online?
We do have a hand raised in Zoom, and so Gary Lynn, I'm going to allow you to talk, and I'll just caution you that we have had issues tonight with audio, so I'm going to turn the speaker up, and we all remember what happened last time, so silence in the room, please. And Gary Lynn, And Gary Lynn.
Hi, this is
Gary Lynn. And Gary Lynn. Gary Lynn. Hang it.
Where the heck is I had to quit print. I had to quit my screen.
This cottage cluster guy that would talk last time.
Gary Lynn, I apologize, there's an echo feedback. Let me try something else real quick.
Scott, that actually should be part of the hearing tonight. So should the last one, but we didn't know that, so.
Okay, so I'll let him,
So just let him know that that's coming in like 20 minutes, maybe?
Gary Lynn, if you didn't hear that, we believe your comments might be related to the tree code, and the council will get to that in a few minutes.
It's cottage cluster, but yeah.
Or the housing, sorry.
Housing code.
Okay,
I see no other comments, Mr. Mayor.
all right. We obviously need to fix whatever that is. All right, tonight's consent agenda. Include the minutes of the city council for March 1st, 2022 work session, March 1st, 2022 regular session, March 5th, 2022 council retreat, and March 8th, 2022 study session. It also includes an Oregon Liquor Control Commission application for Kimmy's Market at 3141 Southeast Harrison Street for off-premise sales. Does anyone wish to remove an item from the consent agenda?
No.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Do we need to get him on the phone so he can?
Yeah, but he wanted to do a presentation.
No, it's Desi.
Desi.
Oh, does he? Because I can't hear his vote. I can't see him. I got nothing.
Councilor Nicodemus, can you, God damn it.
Vote on the consent agenda.
Sorry about that. Why isn't that turning off? Desi, maybe, this is not working.
Mayor, can we take a 5-minute break?
Yeah, let's do, but I would just suggest that we just get him on audio
phone.
on the
Yep.
phone. That way we're not
Yep.
worrying about this at least for him.
Totally.
Yeah, that we're gonna have to take testimony
wait.
that way, but.
Do you hear us, Desi?
That's perfect. I can hear everything.
Okay, did you vote aye on the consent agenda?
Okay.
Okay. So the consent agenda passes unanimously. Our next item is Neighborhood District Association Leadership Check-In. We have several of the neighborhood leaders in the house tonight, and this will be kicked off by our Community Engagement Coordinator, Jason Wachs.
Chairs around the table up here?
That's a lot of people.
It is a lot of people.
I'm gonna get out of the way. You are welcome to this space. You gonna move? Y'all are welcome to our seats. You can move. Oh, we'll sit back here. Okay. You're good. So if you want to take Judson and mine's great. There's room here.
They're afraid of
You might get infected by something.
I was terrified by your mask.
You look good up there.
Thanks. I don't know.
I get to share this, right? Yeah, lead.
I didn't hear that, Jason. Did you call my name?
I was talking to Scott. I need to share this on. So go to the Zoom on the right there. You have to look at the TV, Jason. Nope. You have to look at the TV. Oh. Hey, there. Just let me make sure.
That part worked.
Mayor Gampa, could we get a time check? I have 45-minute presentation planned and,
Yeah, that might be a little
That was
long.
4 days ago.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
I heard you say that the tree code discussion's coming up in 20 minutes and,
On the green.
I was just trying to remember what was between when I was talking in the tree code, and I couldn't remember all the things, so I just made up a number.
okay, all right, thank you.
But I figure, each one of you can have 5, 6, 7 minutes, something like that.
Plenty, thanks.
Yeah. Where? Just do it up here? Nope, no.
Set the timer.
Nah, hopefully not.
There you go.
We'll just go find that big hook that we've got.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you. All right. I'll figure this out someday. All right, good evening.
Good evening.
Is everybody, we're here, we're all here. We're good. Someone can sit here.
I know, they didn't want to sit here either.
I mean, you can come closer.
I mean, you could do this, I want to make Jason feel better.
Yeah, I want to be able to by myself up here. All right, so we're here tonight to check in. It's Neighborhood District Association check-in. I think honestly the last time we did something like this was like 2016, when I look back on it. So it's been a long time. Basically, I'm just going to kick it off. I know we're running a little bit behind tonight, and I don't know how well we're going to connect with some of the folks who are going to be joining us online. So, but I did want to set the stage kind of what the NDA program is a little bit, kind of let you know a little bit about how the city supports the NDAs, and then what we asked these folks to provide for the staff report, and then we'll have an opportunity for all of the NDAs to give an update and have some open discussion, hopefully. So I'll try to get through this first part as quick as I can. So I know most of the folks on council, but for the benefit of folks maybe at home or watching later, an NDA is basically one of the city's official channels for community participation. And anyone that lives, owns property or business, or represents a nonprofit in the city is a member. They're going to actually have they're going to have their elections in May, so I encourage everyone, if you haven't ever been to a meeting, May is a great time to go. NDAs are institutionalized in our comprehensive plan and other areas of the municipal code. The boundaries are established back in 1994 around school catchment zones, and at that time, the city council basically asked them to create founding members, each filed between 1994 and 1996. So it's been an organization, this program has been around for a long time. They all basically have the same bylaws except Ardenwald. Ardenwald actually has members who are in Portland and in the city. So they have two sets of bylaws they go by. Typical officers are the chair, the vice chair, treasurer, secretary, land use committee members, and then a lot of the NDAs to try to get people actively involved, create other positions as well, such as communications, parks, transportation, art. So really, if you're out there and you have a passion for something, I'd encourage you to go to your NDA. Maybe you don't want to be the chair, but maybe you really like art. Let them know, and there's always a place for people who have a passion for something. The support that we provide for the city, so right now there's 61 leaders approximately. There's going to be 68 total meetings in 2022. Right now, most of the NDAs are meeting on Zoom. Some are hoping to resume in person when they can. I know that's been a challenge obviously tonight we know how hybrid meetings can be a challenge, and I know these folks are probably a little anxious about that. I've been trying to help them along and trying to figure out how we can go about doing that with, the resources that we have. Each NDA receives $4,000 annually from the city after they give us an annual report that shows how the funding from the previous year was spent. We purchased liability insurance for the NDAs. Last year's premium is average about $600. We have an event supply trailer that has tables, chairs, that sort of thing in it for their events. There's training. The annual training in June is usually after the election, so that any new members that come on board can be brought up to speed. And then there's other training periodically as well. One of the areas that we help a lot with is communication and engagement as well. So as you know, the pilot newsletter, all the NDAs have an opportunity to put an article in there every month. Every NDA has a web page on our city website. We help them with minutes and agendas that are posted on the city website. And then other assistance with marketing, creating logos, all that sort of stuff. And then really, as we go through the year, we help as much as we can with whatever might come up. So for this meeting, I asked them to basically give us, for the staff report that you were provided with, 2 to 3 of the NDA's most significant accomplishments over the past few years, and then 2 to 3 of the biggest challenges they see kind of moving forward. And what I saw there was a few themes. The pandemic's been a challenge, obviously, for all of us, trying to get the NDAs, get people involved. But I think one of the opportunities there was a way to rethink how we engage. And I think, I know this is difficult to have hybrid meetings, but I think what we really have seen is there are people who can come to the meetings now that maybe they couldn't. Maybe they have kids at home. Maybe they just want to pop into a meeting for 15 minutes for a very specific topic, and they don't want to make that trip to the meeting. So I think we have seen a bit of that happen. So that was an opportunity with the pandemic that forced us to basically rethink that. The NDAs regularly hold events, as you know. So over the pandemic, I think what we saw is a lot of the NDAs started supporting other groups and organizations rather than, since they couldn't do their own events. We did see that. But I will say the NDAs are excited, and I'm sure you'll hear from folks tonight about getting back to events and in-person meetings and all of that in-person engagement that we all love. Some of the challenges, I think, whereas Zoom was, an opportunity to rethink, it was also difficult. I think there's just a sense of the engagement's just not as good when it's online. I think we all got a little bit of Zoom, a little bit tired of Zoom meetings as well. And it did take a little bit of time for all the NDAs to kind of come around and make sure we could get on Zoom, but we got there. And I think maybe the biggest thing that we're kind of behind on the last few years is just leadership development. Less people maybe coming to the meetings. It's just not as exciting for folks. So I think hopefully when we get back to a little more in-person meetings, some of that leadership development can happen. So that's really all. Those are the sort of themes that I was seeing and some of the things that I heard about. And I just wanted to, at this point, just kind of let the NDAs talk to you, because I'm not here really. You hear from me all the time. You don't hear from them as much. I was going to start with joining online, Scott, but do we have some folks online? Do you know? At this point? I think I see Matt Rinker from Matt. Do you want me to allow him to talk? Yeah, if we can. Let's give it a go. God help us. Okay. Matt is muted. Can you hear us, Matt? And do you want to try to speak?
Okay, I finally see my mute button. Hey, I finally have a hand.
Can hear you.
Technology. Hey, welcome. Mayor, councilors, thanks for hosting tonight. Just a few highlights, going back over the last few years, kind of what we've been up to. 2019, before the plague came in, of course, we have our concerts that are always very popular in August. And then, of course, 2020, COVID, so not a whole lot of action going on, but as Jason already mentioned, we transitioned on what we do with some of our funds away from concerts that weren't going to happen into things like helping the GoFundMe campaign for the Bring Play to Milwaukie Bay. We helped fund something called Love One, which helped people who are struggling have a free place to go do laundry.
And we also helped back the Historical Society to create an application for doing kind of an in-person just tour of the Ardmore neighborhood. 2021, I guess things we were up to, we continued the Balfour Street Park plant sale as a fundraiser to help with the development of that park. We managed to finally have an in-person event. It was a Yuletide event in the Ardenwold Park. We had about 45 neighbors showed up. It was hot cider and cookies, so it was kind of nice to, in an outdoor, well-ventilated area, to kind of have some social activities, so that was very nice.
And we continue to do the Tybin Johnson work parties, in cooperation with Portland Parks and Rec and the Johnson Water Creek Watershed Council, just to keep that, creek bed or creek stream restoration, that sort of thing, just so. Challenges, this is already brought up. Zoom is a wonderful technology, and in theory, it'll allow people who couldn't attend in person to show up to a meeting. But largely, we found, pre-COVID, our in-person meetings, we would have between 15, 20 participants, people would show up. It's now very common only to have board members and those who are presenting as guests at the meeting show up. So our attendance is quite a bit down. So we're hoping to resume in-person meetings here soon, but we still want to keep the Zoom component for those for whom it makes sense. So we're exploring the technologies we're going to have to invest in to make that happen. So that's pretty much what we have going on. If anybody has any questions for me.
No questions. I'll just comment that I always thought, I tried pre-COVID to go around to every NDA once a year, and you guys always had good attendance, which I attributed to having wine. But, yeah, I hear you about wanting to get back in person.
Jason, we also have Liz Start from Linwood on Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any way to have, if they're on video, to show that?
If they turn it on. Matt didn't turn his video on. Let's see. Liz, you're on.
Hello. I don't see an option to be on video.
Yeah, hold on. Let me see if I can fix that just a minute. I'm going to promote you to the panel, Liz. You have to accept that and then come in. And Jason may need you to X out of the PowerPoint.
Oh, yeah.
So Liz, you should be back in now and you should be able to turn your camera on.
If I just end this, right?
Everyone?
Would that be okay?
On the right. Jason, look at the TV.
Oh, I always have to look at the TV.
Stop sharing.
I'm gonna get this.
Don't X out of that.
I won't exit out of that. Can I make it bigger?
Yeah, go ahead. Okay, Liz.
There she is.
We can have her like the entire giant screen.
Hello, everyone.
There she is.
Oh my goodness. I see myself double now. Well, I knew wine was an option at NDA meetings, but so that's good to know. I might have to skip to a different NDA. Thank you for having us, Mayor Gamba and City Council. I'm excited to present as the Vice Chair for the Linwood NDA. So as we know, COVID has just made everything very unique. So we've had to readjust, and we are excited that we were still able to have some outside community gatherings throughout kind of COVID closures. So last year we planned a veggie start plant giveaway at Fernberg Park last spring, which was really nice to see a lot of folks from the community. We hosted a Carefree Sunday Station at Stanley Park in last August. We did an Adopt a Road cleanup in November. Usually we have Linwood Avenue adopted. However, because of the multi-use paths being under construction at the time of our fall cleanup, we ended up doing a cleanup of Fernberg Park and the field back there. But then a couple weeks later, we were able to have a booth at the Linwood Avenue multi-use path celebration. So that was really great. And we're really excited as a local NDA to have that access to the multi-use path. So we're really grateful to the city of Milwaukie for putting all that work into it. And then just last weekend, we did another Adopt a Road event. And just as a note, we always try and use our funds to support a local family business, Great American Video and Espresso, to provide treats and coffee at most of our events, just so we're keeping our funds local as we can. So last year, what we did, because we weren't able to do as many events as we would have liked, we did use our funds. We granted all our funds to local organizations and projects that were doing good in the community. And so we continued our support of the Milwaukie Historical Society and the good that they do in the community. We supported last year's and this year's Milwaukie High School graduation party. Continued to support the CERT program. Put money towards the Milwaukie Environmental Stewards Group, which does the Great Styrofoam Recycling Program at Exceed Enterprises. Provided a grant to the Parks Foundation, and then also the Arts Committee for the Great Porch Fest that they put on every year, and looking forward to that again this year. So some of our upcoming priorities that we have for this coming year are really building events that support our local community, and that's been a lot of the discussion of how we can bring folks together. Also exploring how the Three Creeks natural area can benefit our neighborhood since we're so close to it, and we know that there's some work that is starting to be done there that the county is looking at. We'd like to say our claim to fame is really building up our parks. We have Wichita Park, Stanley Park, and Fernburg Park, which is underutilized. So we're looking at how we can host some more events there, and even looking at potentially doing a summer music event at Fernburg Park. But we really, as a NDA, want to be able to continue to play a lead role in city-sponsored events in any way that we can, and bring our community together that way. So some of the things we're looking forward to this coming year, we're going to do our veggie plant giveaway again in May, and we're going to continue to do our Adopt a Road events, and like I just mentioned, potential music events at Fernburg Park, thanks to our friends at Llewellyn who are kind of helping us with some support on figuring out all the logistics of that, and then hosting a Carefree day at Wichita Park for the upcoming annual event. And then we're also looking at using some of our funds to purchase the video audio equipment to be able to really create accessibility with hybrid meetings. I know we were just talking about that in the last NDA was talking about that. I think it's been a benefit to some and not others to have the virtual meetings. So I know, there's a big accessibility component, and then also to some folks who are not comfortable with technology prefer the in-person. So we're looking forward to being able to offer an accessible option for anyone who wants to participate. And really just continuing to support local work and projects as our funding allows. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Anybody else online?
I don't think, not that I know of, no more
Okay.
people on there.
Then let's start in person.
You're up?
Somebody call my name?
This way.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. We'll go this way.
No fanfare or anything, just...
Island Station neighborhood. Thank you, council, for this time to interact and talk about what's coming up with the neighborhood and what challenges we've had. We've had similar challenges to other neighborhoods, of course. Zoom has been a boon, a godsend, and a challenge at the same time, trying to figure it out. But we were able to meet, and we were able to continue with meetings through the period of time. So we're holding our first post-Zoom, post-COVID meeting this month. This will be our first one at the Grange Hall, which is our usual hangout. So the big look forward problem is how do we comply with the state's unfunded mandate? Everybody knows that you're House Bill 2560, and I can see the council is doing it here too. And I really don't know if we can afford this kind of a setup at our neighborhood with the money that we have. I'm pretty sure that we can't. Is this on?
It is. It's just for the TV.
It's on, and it is just for the TV, so you won't hear much.
I won't hear it. Okay, thanks. So I'm not sure how we can afford any. So at least initially, we're going to go pretty old school, and the old school is when we had meetings in the past, and somebody wants to call in, which they can on Zoom, and there would be a phone, and they would speak up, and we'd check in with them like you did with Desi on that vote, and we would just proceed with the meeting. We've done that for years before the pandemic, so that's at least the basic plan that we're going forward. We have some techies in our community who are going to come up with maybe ways to make it video, and maybe we're going to have
the Grange is thinking about getting in Wi-Fi. So if that happens, you know, it'll be sparklies and fireworks will be in the system. So we will comply. It'll be rough at first, I believe. So that's our big challenge coming forward. I know that Jason has offered some suggestions, but no funding so far. So we're going to be working through that. Would like to, another challenge is continuing two-way communication with City Council. Not sure how to do that yet. This is a great way to continue that kind of maybe regular meetings, maybe once a year or something. Might be a good way to do a two-way communication, so just as a suggestion. I like Lisa's idea of coming to the meetings, another good two-way, because certainly you can listen and you can talk, so there you go. Two-way communication. What are we going to do? So we put our brains together and brainstormed at the neighborhood. We've got some projects and some expensive projects, perhaps. We have a war chest. Although we have contributed to other groups like the pantries and the music, we've contributed to all those during the pandemic, but we do have a war chest available. South end of Spring Park, there's always been a discussion about doing something with that, making use of that, so we've got a project that's been proposed for that. There's a bus stop in our area where kids queue up, not so much as it worries right now, but when it gets dark and the kids are out there trying to wait for the bus, you can't see them, so we're thinking about a bus shelter there in one of our intersections in our neighborhood. Thinking about neighborhood signs, something pretty nice, but maybe not too expensive. So welcome to Island Station neighborhood, both at the upper, which is basically River Road, where it intersects the city, and then where you get off of Highway 99 at River Road there, where that crazy intersection, there's some spaces there to put a sign. So we're thinking about that. How we're going to try to increase our participation, maybe offer some food at not meals, not necessarily, but some food at the meetings to help that out. A suggestion is maybe having a way to watch kids, because at our meeting space, we can partition it off, and there's a big space here that kids could romp around in, because we do have some young children that come with the parents that, and with Zoom, it's kind of convenient because you see the mother going off and then coming back and the dad would go off, but that's one thing we've talked about. We're going to survey our members to see what issues they might have. We're going to table at city events here at the Sunday market, and we also have been tabling down there at Elk Rock at the entrance to Spring Park, just to encourage people not to use fireworks and to do other things that are said to do there to help keep that area from burning down or burning up, and also to make the enjoyment for everybody down there as pleasant as possible. That's we're going to provide a door prize at NDA meetings. We're going to do a bike tune-up. I'm going to go a little fast here, kind of running out of time, I think. We have our picnic in September. It's going to be a big one, according to what I'm hearing back from the committee. We're collaborating with other neighborhoods to do perhaps a pride parade, or maybe something even bigger, a spirit parade, but that's something a subcommittee from not me, but some others in my neighborhood. I'll be there supporting it, but we're going to put together maybe a subcommittee to talk about that. The city may want to weigh in on that, and I'm sure they're going to have to permit some things if we need that, so we'll need the city support on that. I would like to I would encourage the city to continue with your proactive approach to camping. We've seen at least in our neighborhood, where the police and the city support staff, Peter Passarelli, I'm not sure what department to mention there, but come out and help clean up those camps. Thank you. Let's be proactive on those things, rather so that we don't have many campers to deal with. We just have one at a time, and we can help them get into whatever they need to support them. I want to encourage the council to think about directors and officers insurance, which is something that I've talked about before. It's something to protect all of us as officers from people just having kind of a wild idea that they should sue the city and council, the president of the NDA, because they don't like what's going on in their neighborhood. So that's, it's not very expensive. Other cities do that to protect, on all you behind, up there at the dais would also be covered by that. It's the times we live in, so I encourage you to consider that. And I'm also want to continue to be concerned about the Good Neighbor funds, how the effect is on the impact of the wastewater treatment plant on the neighborhoods of our neighborhood and historic. And now the funds are going to be used all over the city and not for the impact of the plant, but for other purposes. So would like to figure out how to participate in that, but it sounds like that we're going to have to go back to the way it was before the Good Neighbor Committee and talking to the county directly, maybe through the city when things don't go the way that they should be going. So just think about that, ways to make that better. Thank you. Mic drop.
Thank you.
I think that would probably shut down the network.
Don't do that, don't do that.
Oh, Mike.
And
Jason, I actually had a question related to something that Charles shared.
Sure.
You've done a little research into the type of equipment it would take to do hybrid meetings, correct? And what were the costs that you estimated?
That one is too.
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of options, and Scott and I have actually talked about this as well. I mean, I think a laptop with really just a laptop with Wi-Fi could work. It's almost like different levels. Like if you want to go bare bones, a laptop, we're going to continue to provide Zoom to all the NDAs. So, a laptop with a Wi-Fi, and then, I think from there, maybe adding a better camera, like an external camera. And then there's several more portable cameras as well. So it's anywhere from $100, for a good, if you have a laptop. I mean, that's presuming that someone in the NDA has a laptop they can use. And, and I did mention also that if an NDA wanted to, NDA funds could be used that we provide every year to purchase an NDA laptop. It would have to be passed down from chair to chair, but that's something that folks could consider as well. So, so I mean, I think it's just that there's kind of a menu. So I think we'll figure it out, one way or another, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And just so the group knows, I do see the two representatives from Hector Campbell. They're on Zoom as well.
Oh,
so
okay.
I don't want to cut in the line. I know we're moving down the line, but they are on.
We gotta
bring them in.
It seems to be working, so we should.
Yeah, do it quick.
Yeah.
I see Corinne and Sarah, and Corinne's the chair. Is that right? So should I try Corinne first?
Corinne is the chair. Yep.
Okay, Corinne, if you can hear us, I'm going to promote you to the panel. There you go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can
Yes,
hear
we
you.
can. Thank you.
Can hear
I'm gonna step away from my children for a second. See me walk through my house. All right, so Hector Campbell, we have focused a bit this year on engagement, and so trying to reconnect with our neighborhood and try to find ways that are best for our neighbors to engage. And so we have switched up our meeting format. And so we've done half of our meetings on a Wednesday evening and half of our meetings on Sunday afternoons to try to recognize that not everybody can meet at the same time every month, and maybe part of the engagement issue that we've been seeing has been due to the time and the location of our meetings. And so they have been on Zoom. We've had one in person, and it was very well attended. It was at a park outside end of last summer. So we are planning to get back to in-person meetings next month. And we also cut back the amount of meetings, just recognizing that, for all of the people who are wanting to attend, in addition to all of the officers of the NDA, monthly meetings are just kind of a lot. And so if we can focus on less meetings and more in-person events and activities and things for people to get engaged with, we were just hoping to attract more members. So that's been more of our focus this year. Really, our whole leadership took over we have all new leadership as of last May, and hoping, that we can continue on again this year so that we can continue with our goals. Recognizing that 1 year wasn't quite long enough to get through all of our goals, but so our focus being, how can we get more people involved? How can we hear more voices from our neighbors? And how can we diversify the voices that we hear from our neighbors, and also the types of things that people can get involved in? So just trying a variety of different types of events. And also we did get into the Adopt the Road program through the city of Milwaukie. And so we will have our first road cleanup this month as part of an Earth Day celebration, and also looking at ways that we can work more closely with our other neighbors and other NDAs and with the city, and how to expand our reach and our just the work that we're doing, so that it's not so insular within our NDA, but expand beyond our neighborhood.
All right, thank you. Okay. Who's next?
I think that's me. Lisa Lashbrook from the Llewellyn neighborhood. I actually would like to see an NDA leadership meeting that used to have those, or we have those sometimes, that focuses some part on retention of new members, or how do you get new members, because it's sort of this age-old problem and we keep talking about it. And I kind of look around our NDA, the exception here, and go, it's a bunch of middle-aged people. We have to, and we do have some younger people, but I think it's really important to figure out how to engage not only members of different communities, but some younger blood that's going to take over as I go, you know what, I'm done, I'm out. That's going to happen. We also, in our NDA, have supported a lot of the grants that have come forward. I don't want to name them, you've heard them. That's some of the accomplishments we've had in the past. I want to talk about the future, though, because I'm really excited that we are looking at bringing back concerts in the park. And we have our bands mostly lined up. But one of the things we've talked about is that with the rising costs of the bands themselves, and then our sound guy, his prices went up. Five concerts in August probably won't be feasible in the future. So we've kind of started beginning conversations about, well, maybe we look to another neighborhood association and say, we'll take 3 and you take 2, or we're trying to figure out how to, unless our grant increases, we won't be able to keep this up in the future. And then the solstice event, I kind of think of it as our event that we gave to the city. And I'm hoping that that's going to happen. It looks like it's going to, and so we're starting planning for both of those things, and I'm really excited about it. Becca's going to talk more about what we've been doing in the last year or two.
Thanks. Yeah, it is really weird. Good evening. Thank you for inviting us. Rebecca Stavengerd. I'm the chair of the Llewellyn Neighborhood Association, or District Association. Many of the other NDAs have commented on how difficult it's been over the last couple of years using Zoom to get together, and I feel like it's been sort of a blessing and a curse for our NDA. There have definitely been challenges meeting online, but it's also given us a chance to build, a really solid core of folks and work on some actionable projects too. So one of the projects that I wanted to share with you tonight, and you've probably heard bits and pieces about in the last year or so, is the transportation committee that we formed. The work actually, unfortunately, began several years ago when there was the death of a young child in our neighborhood, and residents came to the NDA expressing, rightfully concern, wanting to know how they could engage in some positive solutions in the neighborhood, knowing that the TSP is queuing up and much of that conversation would be coming to the city, knowing that we would have representation to that planning effort, we thought, well, what better opportunity to really start the planning a little bit early and engage our neighbors in the conversation, not only to increase education about how a process like that moves forward and some of the terms and the policies, associated in that work, but also, to give them an opportunity to have a say without coming down to City Hall or engaging in one of the more formal opportunities for engagement. So it was, a group of really amazing volunteers that participated in this. We had a committee of about almost 8 over the course of many months. We started meeting in June and we met weekly. And some of them, I know. So some of those were on Zoom calls, and we also met in person. So we had, I have a pretty tech-friendly family, and so we have a laptop with a hotspot and a small TV with an HDMI cord and an external speaker. And that's how we set up for hybrid meetings, which were held outside. So we put together a survey for our neighbors with the help of one of the members of the committee. We translated it into Spanish. That same committee member also contributed graphic design skills, and so put together the fancy logo that you saw in the slide a couple slides ago. And we started hitting the streets. So we sent it out electronically. We also made contact with about 35 businesses that were in the neighborhood, almost all of whom hosted brochure racks for us. And so the brochure had an overview of the issue, how people could get involved, a link to the survey. We were able to gather over 150 responses. A majority of those were from residents within the NDA. So over 84% came from people who lived in the neighborhood. We divided our neighborhood, and you can see us on the northern portion of the map up there with the checkerboard pattern with unincorporated Clackamas County. We divided our neighborhood up into 3 sections, and we had fairly equal representation in the survey responses from each of those 3 segments. So we had committee members who were standing by, to make sure that we would hit the streets if necessary, if we saw that that was skewed in one way or another, but we really saw really good, about a third in each for representation. We had an opportunity, so thank you to everyone involved, especially you, for giving us permission to have a booth and a table at the Carefree event in August, and that actually kicked off our survey work. So it was really great for folks to stop by and get engaged with neighbors who were heading up the survey, have some conversations, and what we found was that, really unsurprisingly, the responses focused on speed, safety, and conditions, but it also gave us prioritized streets. So our representatives to the TSP process will now know that 150 of our closest neighbors have given us, kind of marching orders when we go into the TSP conversations around prioritization for those streets, around some of the improvements that they'd like to see. We wrote a grant through PSU's Recovery Fellowship Program, and we were successful in that grant. So we had a PSU student who was also assigned to work with the committee and help us with some of the GIS mapping, which is great. And then we also made an effort to involve youth, young people involved in decision-making process is always kind of challenging, and it can be really intimidating for them. And so we had some youth from Ardenwald and Rao who participated in the process. And thank you to your engineering team. A couple of folks made it out to do a walk-along with them during spring break. So they had an opportunity to show what it's like to go across 42nd Avenue, and we talked about some of the increased signage and some of the other things that, having not necessarily been part of the process, they wouldn't have known what a rapid flashing beacon is, but now you have 11-year-olds who are saying, we'd like a rapid flashing beacon right here and some increased signage, and that can be really empowering, not just for residents, but definitely for students who don't have a voice and feel like, how many adults do I have to talk to before I can get something changed in my life? So I'll stop there. Of course, we could go on forever, but you know where to find us.
Just one more thing that came up at our last NDA meeting. I know a lot of NDAs are thinking about going in-person hybrid. And one of our complications has been finding a comfortable space, but also an accessible space, especially in our neighborhood. And so we started wondering if offering the Zoom option satisfies that. It's something to think about, something we'd like to know if that satisfies that or not.
Hi, Vince Alvarez, Chair of the Lake Road NDA Association. Been doing this for quite a few years now. May will be my final, I'm stepping down, and so is my wife. It's been an interesting past couple of years with the pandemic. We've discovered that coming along with the hybrid meetings and the Zoom meetings, that it kind of carries over some of the problems that can happen on the internet with misunderstandings. We had to require Clackamas County mediation to get into a meeting. Jason attended that as well to try to help clear up some of the circumstances, some of the anger that was flowing around our NDA. It seemed to help a little bit, but we still got some of that going on. I think we need some young blood to come in, as you were mentioning before too, that we have the same people have been attending our NDAs for years, and it's difficult to try to figure out ways to attract fresh blood into the NDA. But we're trying to do that. We had probably our biggest success and also our biggest failure this last year. One of our great achievements was using funds to finally add some plantings to the bare lot, our potential future park. We came together as a community, pitched in to plant many trees. It was quite successful. We had a lot of people show up with shovels and planted over $2,200 worth of trees and bushes that we got at some really great prices. This was before anybody knew that there was all of a sudden going to be money for the park. So we figured we'd had a bare lot for about 9 years, and it was time to do something with it. We also had several hardworking volunteers come together to keep these trees alive with regular watering during the heat of last summer. It took a good hour and a half to 2 hours to water all that park. And we had a neighbor there who allowed us to hook up to her water spigot, and we paid her increased water bills for the summer. So that worked out really well. It was probably our biggest failure due to the breakdown in communication with the city and the NCPRD. People that we were corresponding with were absent at a critical state, which led to problematic communication from other employees that were not aware of previous discussions. So that dark cloud, we turned into another successful evolution by the neighborhood of having to hold a plant uprooting and sale to recoup our NDA's investment. These are still a few smaller trees and bushes left, but we did a pretty good job of recovering most of the costs and removing all the plants we planted last year. I know we have another master planning process coming up. I don't think it's going to be much different than the plan that we came up with before. I mean, where we planted was in line with the master plan before. I don't imagine a lot of differences going to be taking place with the new master plan. I mean, there was some talk about a roller coaster and stuff, but I don't think that's going to happen. Internet access, maybe a Wi-Fi hotspot in the middle of the park that might get the kids there. But we're looking forward to see what happens with that. We've been doing the same thing as the other NDAs with supporting some of our great organizations in this town, like the Historical Society, the prom, not the prom, but the senior class party. We also had a successful thing. We provided some scholarships for some high school students that were in the video program, and they put together a video on the history of Lake Road, going back to showing some of the Native American history in our town, in our section of the town along the creek, and put together a nice little video, and we gave them a little scholarship for that and gives them something good to put on their college admissions. So I'm hoping that we will be moving forward with the parks. It appears like that is in the works. It'll be interesting to see where the park goes, and where we maybe put plants back where we put plants before and took them out and put them back again. But it's been a fun ride, and I'm hoping we can get someone else who can offer some fresh insight into our community and maybe a little more energy than I've been able to muster for a while. But thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks, Vince.
Can I ask, I had heard about the video before. Is that something that's available somewhere online, or?
I just sent my wife a message asking where it was available.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I think it's available through our page on this,
On the city's website?
and also possibly through the city's website, but I have to,
Okay.
should come back to the end.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'm in. You know what, I think I'd rather, yeah, thank you. Yeah, yeah. Hi, I'm Val Hubbard. I'm with the Historic Downtown Neighborhood Association. I'm the co-chair. My cohort here is the president. As of a year ago, we are brand new. All new officers. In fact, Jason had to run the meeting when we had nobody to run the meeting. And that's when we elected the officers. And really, there's 5 of us, and it was a question of whether or not, are you going to have a neighborhood? And we couldn't imagine that we didn't, so we raised our hands. So last year, it was a getting to know each other because we didn't know. Also, we understand that we're in a unique situation because we are downtown Milwaukie, NDA. We have responsibility to our other NDA members to make sure that we invite them to meetings where we have people that we feel they would like to have information from. So we do that. We've met with them, several of the NDAs. We've also met with Celebrate Milwaukie. We're finding that there was so much overlap of, well, who does this, who does that? So we've met with them. We've met with the Historic Museum, with the Downtown Business Association, just to get kind of a lay of the land. And one of the, you kind of, Corinne took the words out of my mouth, that part of our initiative was to involve more people. COVID really took a toll, and we were only getting maybe 5 to 6 people on the meetings, and so one of our initiatives was to involve more people in everything that we did and make them feel like they did have a voice, that they could make a difference. And we've been, I think, really successful in doing that. We've got a lot more volunteers that will volunteer with us to, help with the Adopt a Road, with Earth Day. We've got about 4 phenomenal volunteers who you call them and they're like, yes, what do you need? We'll be there. Our Zoom meetings are now sometimes up to 25 people, depending on the person that we've got speaking. So we're feeling pretty good about where we are now versus a year ago. One of the things that the name that just kept coming up over and over again as we talked to the groups of people, Celebrate Milwaukie, Downtown Business, and then also just community members, is Ed Zumwalt, and how he is missed and how he was such a force. And we know we probably will never be able to replace him, but our goal is that we do try and approach it to where each person gives what they can give and feel good about that, and just have the spirit of Ed kind of pushing us forward. And we should maybe do something for Ed Zumwalt, maybe in the sculpture garden or something, just a plaque. I don't know, he just did so much. Anyway, so Rich, you're going to talk about the events and...
Yeah, a little bit. Thank you. Is this okay? Just this. Every time I come to a meeting or Zoom or in person, I'm so struck by the talent that's in our community. And again today, hearing from each of the neighborhoods and the reports and even the commenters before we started this proceeding, people bringing talents to this community. I'm Rich Recker. I'm the chair. I'm a native. I relocated here in 2018. I've been working in sustainable community development for about 30 years, and I've had the luxury to work in a bunch of different communities, many high-stressed, poverty-based communities. In the last 20 years, it's been around the idea of combining education, K-12 education, and helping build their whole person skills within service and experiential learning and community. We had relocated to the Great Lakes region. We knew we wanted to come west, but there needed to be a place for me to keep doing my work. And as much as I'm loyal to Milwaukie, I wanted to find the right place. It turns out that Milwaukie was the best damn place to do it. all of a sudden there's a climate action plan. There's a vision document that talks about sustainability, equity, and livability. The stars lined up to come here. Met with the superintendent of North Clackamas Schools, and we charted a pilot project for Milwaukie, Oregon, which would have put school-age kids in the streets with supervision and working on active, hands-on sustainability projects. And that was exciting. And then the whole world got sick. And that got wiped away. The district had other priorities that they needed to tend to. And that's when Jason became my best friend, I think, because he was trying to get a new chair for the Historic Milwaukie Neighborhood Association. And I got a chance to work with some fantastic people over the last year. And we learned a lot. And I think I just want to summarize real quickly what I think we've learned. One, I think Milwaukie still is in a fantastic position to be a very important model that cities, particularly smaller cities, need to see about how important that this building block is to build a sustainable world. If we can't do it at the local level, at the community level, then the whole world has no shot. That's our mandate. And all these things we're talking about mixes into it. I think one of the elements that I think we've all talked about here is the Ed Zumwalt era is over. It cannot just be one guy or 7 people or 12 people. Every single person in community has to have a role in building a sustainable community. And so we can add wine to meetings, we can kind of have all kinds of twists, but we really have to invest in how do we create meaning and purpose and incentive for people in our neighborhoods to be actively involved. And that sounds onerous. I've heard talk about how hard that is. And our insurance policies and our lawyers. But we need those people. We need their gifts. We need their talent. And we got to start somewhere. Last summer, tail end of the COVID, one of the things that we've talked about is how many talented groups and people we have around, but we don't necessarily do a great job of connecting ourselves. We've started to talk more with our neighborhood NDAs. And when there's several things going on that are good, sometimes all you got to do is connect the dots. Last year, working with First Friday, the Alumni Association, Milwaukie Mustang Born Scholarship Foundation, School District, Milwaukie High School, Downtown Business Association, we, using social media promotion only, promoted all Milwaukie homecoming. Many of you were there. Some of you were at the microphone. Most of you probably didn't see all facets of what were going on that day. We had 600 alums come in from out of town and join that celebration. The legal stuff, they wanted to see that building. And then they went and patronized downtown businesses and bought food. And I think they may have bought a drink or two. They brought their sense of community from wherever they were and their value sets. They came back to this city. And that's a stepping stone. I think we need to gather. I've heard that theme over and over today. We need to gather again. Pandemic, yes. Did we have problems before the pandemic in gathering, being civil, connected, relational? Yes, we did. We can't blame the pandemic for everything. We need to get back in community with one another, working side by side and working on making Milwaukie the most sustainable city it can be. I think we have some work to do to figure out how to work better together. And I know that comes across as criticism and frustration, and I apologize for that. But it is work. It does take an investment. So much of our investment in NDAs is around the built community right now. We need another proportional investment in the human community, us, our people, our neighbors, and bringing their gifts to bear in our community. That's a lot of work. But you've got a great team here that's ready to go into action. Work with us. find a little bit more time, formally or informally, to take a look at this structure and say, how can we fine tune it? How can we make it better? And I know that we talk about how our neighborhood is different, and it is. It has, robust part of the business community sits in our neighborhood, and we want to play that role. We want to be a convener, we want to be a host, we want to be a connector, and we want to work side by side with our fellow neighbors and our staff and make all that happen. Thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to your questions and working with you in the coming year.
Any questions? No? Well, thank you all. This was a really fun and interesting conversation. Hopefully this next year won't be quite as weird as the last two have been, and we can start to gel a little more and do a lot more things in person and kind of maybe create a new normal that's even better than the old normal.
Thanks for having us.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we need breaks before?
I was just going to ask for one, if we could, maybe,
Okay.
before we get into the next.
So we will take a 5-minute recess and be back at 7:48.
I'm not gonna touch the AV stuff, so just know that we're hot.
All right, our next item this evening is the comprehensive plan implementation, housing and parking code amendments and ordinance. Public hearing on the proposed housing and parking code amendments, file number ZA-2021-002 is called to order. The purpose of this hearing is to receive final update from staff, take any additional public comments, conduct a final deliberation, and continue the hearing to April 19th, when council is scheduled to adopt the code amendments. Does any council member wish to announce actual or potential conflicts of interest? Seeing none, I'm going to assume that Desi has none still. So staff report. Vera.
Good evening, everyone. Vera Coley, Senior Planner, back again. Talk about housing and parking code. I have a brief presentation just to go over the comments and edits that came out of our marathon session on the 29th. You had in your packet an updated code as of March 30th that did have highlighted changes that came out of the meeting from the 29th, so happy to answer any questions that you might have about that. But I did want to go over a couple, three things that I was hoping to get some, I guess, a straw poll type of situation from those on a couple things that we brought up in the staff report.
Sarah?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt.
Please.
For the people in the room, you're sounding great online. We're sounding great online, so no one jinx that. But if you could project a little bit more for the folks
I'd be
in the
happy
back
to
room
do
here.
that.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay. Okay. There we go. Okay, one of the items that we discussed on the 29th that I believe there was support for from council, and I'm trying to confirm that, had to do with accessory dwelling units, and specifically accessory dwelling units in the front yard. There appeared to be support from council for a couple different scenarios for accessory dwelling units in the front yard. The first is that there was an existing garage in the front yard and the conversion of that structure into an ADU as it was. The second scenario was to allow a second story as an ADU on top of an existing garage in the front yard. And then the third scenario would be the construction of a new ADU in the front yard. And the proposed code that we put forward into the packet had all of those things being permitted for ADUs. The third one was as far as allowing the construction of a new ADU in the front yard. It would still be subject to the front yard setback for the zone. But I wanted to confirm with council if I understood the direction correctly, and if the code that we submitted as part of the packet was what you intended to convey to staff, as far as if ADUs are allowed to be in the front yard, either through the conversion of an existing structure, the addition of a second story to that existing structure, or brand new ADU in the front yard, subject to the ADU standards that we submitted in the code.
So the way it's written, are all three by right, or are some of them?
They're all by right, in the code that you had in your packet.
Even if the existing structure is on a zero lot line?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So my only issue with it was the timing of the existing structure, the 3-year thing. I don't know why we wouldn't just say as of date of adoption or some fixed date like 1/1/2000 or 2020, or some date. If there was an existing non-conforming garage in the front yard now, you can do this. But that whole 3-year thing, I don't know how anybody would get permission to build a garage in 2023 in the front yard. Would they get permission for that?
You mean 3 years ago?
No, 3 years, like next year, once we've passed all this. I don't know how someone could create a new non-conforming thing in the yard. So I don't know what the 3-year thing gets us, but I guess it just is a door to me for some gamesmanship. And so let's just put a date. Okay. Let's just put existing as of the date of enactment, or the 1st of January, or,
We can have it as the date of adoption. That's the easiest to use. So, okay.
fine with that.
Yeah.
So, thumbs, we're good on all three? Desi, you got a thumb for us?
It's got a whole hand.
A verbal thumb would work. Okay.
Up and down.
Cool.
Yes, that's fine.
All right.
Thank you. This is working really well. It's awesome. Okay. Council discussed adding universal design, or ADA, design as an incentive, or as one of our detailed design details for construction of new dwellings, that you would get credit for that within that list of detailed design standards. So we've added that to the list. I just wanted to note for council that the Oregon, the residential code does not have ADA standards in it, so there isn't an ADA code to review an accessory or a residential dwelling against. So the ADA standards are in the commercial code. So if, for example, a quadplex, a detached quadplex were designed and one of those units was going to be the ADA unit, that unit would be evaluated or reviewed against the commercial code, and it would need to be built to the commercial code, all of the commercial code, not just the ADA aspect of the code.
And I had a question about that.
Sure.
I think when I was thinking about this, I was actually intending more universal design standards than ADA code.
Right. Yes. So universal design standards are not standards in the building code, so we wouldn't have a code to review it against. So I elected to use ADA because that's the only thing that's similar to that within the Oregon Building Code. So I just wanted to put out sort of this kind of the sort of the way this was going to have to lay out. So
I'm trying to think of something that we have in our list of things that you can do that wouldn't necessarily find itself in the Oregon Building Code either.
Anything to do with sustainability?
Well, but you know how we have our list of options. I mean, there's got to be something in there that isn't necessarily in the building code. It's just a thing that we're asking, saying, this is a thing you could do that makes you hit this list.
Yes.
I mean, can't we just come up with the criteria ourselves that the doors have to be, whatever it is, 3.30s and
So, if I may, the concern there is that all of those items in that detailed list are things that planning staff reviews against, because it's just what you can see on that facade that's on that street-facing facade. A bay window, a porch of X square feet, eaves that are X,
staff doesn't
that
inspect
sort
the
of
building.
thing. Right. The interior of the building, that's the building official, and when I spoke with her about this a couple times, that's kind of where I just wanted to be able to present to you. There's some challenges to it. So we have it, just to understand though that unit would need to be designed and constructed to the full commercial code. That would include sprinklers and all of that sort of thing. This applies very specifically to for detached units. If they're attached units, we're in the commercial code anyway, but I just wanted to highlight that for you, that it's not as clear-cut as we'd like.
Is there really more than sprinklers that goes into the commercial code?
Oh, the walls are different.
Yeah, that was kind of the one, that was, as when I was speaking with Sam, that was sort of the one, that's the big ticket item that's different, or that's the most obvious thing that's different between the two. So we have it in the list. I just wanted you to understand that it's not as simple.
It's not what we were hoping for.
Not exactly, no. It's something, but it's not exactly what you wanted.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Sam?
Since it's a bigger lift, then could we make it 2 of the checkoffs? Is that a possibility? So that there's more bang for the buck for that buck that you're spending?
You certainly could do that, yes. Sorry, can you repeat that?
So, you know how they have to have, there's a list of design things and you have to choose 4 out of 7 or what, I don't know.
You need 5 or 7 if your garage door is larger.
So you have to choose 5 out of this list of things. And I'm suggesting that they get 2 points
for
doing ADA rather than just a point. Because that way then maybe that mitigates a little bit the cost of all the things they're going to have to do to hit commercial code.
I mean, I'm game to try it.
I just, I think it's a worthy thing to try and make happen because we have an aging population and more people are going to need homes that are accessible. And the more we can help the industry.
Yeah, I think that's true. I guess again, I think that the folks who design and build that housing are going to meet some of those universal standards because of the population they're serving. So, but I understand where we're sort of landing on this. And so I think if it's 2 credits, then that does make it a little bit more palatable.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Just a technical thing. I think it's the Americans with Disabilities Act. I just Googled, and it's so funny because it does come up as American Disabilities Act, but I don't think that's the proper name. I think it's...
I'll make sure I have the right title for it. Thank you. Okay. Is that a thumbs up?
That was a thumbs up. Desi, how are you on that one?
It's a yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Minimum lot size. Council opted to require single detached units to be on a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet as opposed to the smaller lot sizes for middle housing. I just wanted to note that we included a footnote that these are for new lots created on or after the adoption date of the code. That's our current code would recognize an undersized lot of record. Just wanted to make sure that you knew that this is for newly created lots. So I didn't want there to be any confusion if you saw it later. So, okay. We talked about minimum parking for townhouses. Staff is offering for townhouse developments of 8 townhouses or more, that's when the requirement for parking would kick in at the 0.5 units per, or 0.5 spaces per unit. We came up with that number because townhouses can be built in blocks of 4. So we thought two of those would be an appropriate time to trigger the parking space requirements of the 0.5, but we're certainly open to changing that number, but we thought that was a reasonable number to start and as a place for where townhouses would start. Generally, townhouses are built with the garages. That's sort of kind of how they're built, but there certainly could be a situation where they're not, or they're backloaded. If there's an alley, I've seen some sort of conceptual ideas that have those as well. However, if they aren't, we thought 8 was a reasonable place to start, but again, open to discussion on that.
And that would be, so if you've got 8, you would have effectively 4 parking spots. It's not that once you hit 8, then you have to add it.
It's 8, right?
Just wanted to make that very clear.
Right, add 8, so there would be 4, correct. Is it okay to ask if that works for everyone? Counselor Beatty?
Not me, but I don't.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Nope, they should all have a parking spot.
And probably will.
Pardon?
And probably will.
Many will. And it's an opportunity, I think it's an interesting opportunity for, for car sharing and different ways people think about.
Oh, I think 7, 8 years from now, we might have the EV charging in the street. We might have more car sharing. We might have lots of things. We might have more buses. We're just not there yet.
Do we want to ask Desi? We want to make him reach for that space bar?
Desi?
I'm okay with 0.5 spaces.
On 8.
Or does he?
Triggered at 8.
Yeah, triggered more.
Dude. Hot toddy.
Thumbs up button, maybe we can
This
ask.
sounded like screaming for a hot toddy.
Yeah, he could just do his hand raise if he wants to.
Yeah.
Maybe a thumbs up and because a hand raise means
He wants to talk.
so.
Yeah.
Is there a thumbs up
There is a
option?
thumbs up.
Is there? Okay.
Yeah.
I
It
had no
doesn't stay
idea.
up long, so we'll have to watch. Okay.
I'll just unmute. It's okay.
We're good. All right.
That's the end of the changes or the things that I wanted to make sure that I had clear from you folks. Obviously, certainly happy to answer any questions if you found any other things in the code, because I'm sure you've read it again. So if there's anything else, I'm happy to answer any questions about that, but that concludes the changes as proposed.
Scott, while everyone's thinking about that, would you check in with Garland and see, I think we just passed what he wanted, so he may not feel the need anymore?
I'll message him.
Okay.
He indicates he still has comments.
Mayor, we're currently in deliberations, so I don't know that it's proper for Mr. Garland to comment. If you have questions about a certain item.
We didn't notice it as deliberations.
Oh, okay.
Staff report.
Okay, okay, I'm sorry, I stand corrected.
We actually started deliberating, so you're right to check it out.
Walks like a duck, smells like a duck.
Any more questions for staff?
No.
Realizing we can still deliberate after. Okay.
I might just stay in case.
Okay, cool. So, does anyone wish to comment on the amendments to the housing and parking code? Council will now take public testimony on the proposed code amendments. I will recognize speakers and any questions should be addressed through me. Before you speak, please state your name and city of residence for the record. For those who wish to testify in person, please submit a yellow comment card to staff. If you are on Zoom and would like to speak, please raise your hand, write a note in Zoom chat, or email ocr@milwaukeeoregon.gov. For those who wish to testify and are calling in through Zoom, please raise your hand by dialing *9. Presentation times for all speakers will be limited. Individuals will have 3 minutes and representatives of groups will have 10 minutes. Please confine your remarks to the proposed action, avoid repetition and irrelevant information.
Mayor, while we get that teed up, did we miss the question about additional correspondence since maybe staff can, I don't remember seeing any that came through, but I just figured we might.
Good question, thank you.
I have not seen any additional
Turned my page over too soon.
Mr. Mayor, I believe we have just one comment. I checked the mailbox. I don't see any yellow comment cards from the audience in person, but the one Garland Woodsong, I'll promote him on the Zoom.
Okay, thank you.
Garland, we just promoted you, so if you can click yes to that question, there you go. And Garland, I believe, has a presentation, a slideshow, so Garland, I'll make you a co-host. So Garland, whenever you're ready.
Hello, thank you. Okay. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I wanted to follow up on my comments from last week about ADUs in the front setback to clarify the suggestions of the Milwaukie ADU study of 2019. And so, let's see. Trying to get this thing to advance. And let's see if we can get it to. Okay. doesn't want to, so I'm going to go through in this screen. I have been in discussion with my colleagues to try and clarify some of the questions that came up last week around ADUs in the front setback. In particular, how to ensure that you get an active street frontage and don't overdevelop your front yard. I do want to clarify that the suggestion is for ADUs within the front setback, not to continue to make ADUs subject to a front setback. And so these images are from DPC Co-Design. This is from a study they did in Apollo Beach, Florida, showing what it might look like to take a typical suburban neighborhood and to allow ADUs in the front setback. The recommendations of DPZ are to limit the amount of the frontage that's dedicated to the automobile, so that the frontage is primarily pedestrian oriented, and then leave it up to the designer and the applicant how they want to use their space. And so as you can see, there's a variety of options to introduce an ADU in the front yard that can add to the street frontage and make it a more pedestrian experience. So this leads me to three policy options to consider. The first is to limit an ADU within the front setback as a carriage house to the footprint of the existing driveway. The second is to limit the width of the carriage house frontage containing a garage door that serves automobiles not to exceed 30% of the total lot frontage width. And the third is to not limit other ADUs in the front setback, but rather to require that the site comply with Milwaukee's 40% tree canopy coverage requirement and to require street trees to be planted along the frontage to ensure that you are getting shade for the sidewalk as a part of the bargain. So those are the just in a nutshell, the recommendations that I have, and to clarify that the recommendation is to allow for ADUs within the front setback and not to limit the action to just legalizing ADUs above non-conforming garages, but to allow new construction of new ADUs within the front setback, and in particular to encourage those ADUs to be fronted as close to the sidewalk line as possible to preserve shared outdoor and common space behind the ADUs for the private use of the additional residents that ADUs will bring to each lot. And finally, I want to make a comment on your previous discussion to clarify that to get to universal design, you don't want to require the commercial building code. You just want to require that a certain number of units be accessible, and you want to take the definition of accessible from the commercial code, but ADA does not apply to residential buildings. The Fair Housing Act does apply, but you might want to go beyond the Fair Housing Act. And again, the language you're looking for is accessible units. And the definition of an accessible unit is what you're going to want to look for in getting to your goals for universal design. Thank you. That's all the comments I have for this evening.
Thanks, Carolyn. Oh, I was going to ask him to go back to that slide.
I know, yeah.
Would you go back to the slide with your three code provisions?
There you go. Did you see that?
Yes, I want to, hang on. Okay, thank you.
Sure thing. Do you have any clarifying questions while my clock's still running?
Anybody? Vera, do you have any clarifying questions on the universal access or the universal?
To that point specifically, Samantha Vandegrift, our building official, is on the call and has, I guess, some comments or, can participate in that conversation. Because it would be the building department that would be confirming the accessible design or whatever we call it, because it's on the interior of the building. So right. I think it would be helpful to have her speak to that directly.
Okay, cool. So Sam, can you?
Hi, I'm Samantha, and I'm the building official for City of Milwaukee. I just wanted to speak to the ADA requirements. So the residential code does not have any ADA requirements in it. So although they could be preferable and they can be requested, if they don't do it right, I cannot require them to change it. So they may show it on the plans, but I can't require, if they don't do it to the commercial code where we have those ADA standards, I can't require them to make it ADA accessible.
Right, but then wouldn't that be like anything else that they did on this list? If they said they were going to do a, what's the type of window that gets you
A bay window.
a bay window? If they said they were going to do a bay window and they turned around and they didn't do a bay window, then they just wouldn't get that credit, right? And then they'd be on the hook for something else.
Yes, but planning requires those and planning inspects those. I do not. So you're kind of cross-pollinating, I want to say. So you're having things in the municipal code that are required for the planning part of it, but you're having me check it in the field. And I can tell planning that they didn't do it or that it doesn't meet code, but I can't require them to fix it. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you. So, Vera, or whoever wants to answer this, when a builder doesn't do the thing they said they were doing to meet their 5 items, how does that work? What happens?
Generally, those come at the, well, that would be at the final inspection that we would find those things, and that's why we do final inspections. It happens, for example, if they've taken credit for windows in their garage door for their glazing minimum,
Right.
and then we go and they've installed a garage door that doesn't have the windows, and now they're not at their percentage, and as an example, you need to switch out that garage door. You have to meet that standard. So we don't sign off on the final, they don't get a certificate of occupancy, and they need to fix it and meet the standard. In this case, I think as Samantha has identified, this is a standard that she's reviewing for on the interior of the building, but it's our requirement, so we need to figure out how we would do that. And Garland makes a good point, as far as what are we calling it? And so if we wanted to take it out of the building code, then we're not calling it, accessibility, we're not triggering the commercial code, but we would need to understand from a planning department how we're communicating with Samantha and vice versa about about accessible design and what that definition is. And it sounds like the suggestion is taking that definition from the commercial code, but putting into the planning code. So we would need to figure out how we would do that. I'd like to talk to Samantha about that. Not here. Figure out how to do that and see how that would work. 'Cause I'm just not sure.
Okay.
And do I understand correctly that we're really talking about single unit houses and duplexes, because the commercial code does apply to triplexes and
Cottages.
cottages? Oh, well, and
Only if they're
Cottages,
attached.
that's where.
A detached quadplex would be subject.
Right.
To the residential code. So, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So I
We can
guess
figure something
if you guys can have that offline, figure out if there's a path there that doesn't, I mean, we're trying to get the accessibility, not cause it to be more expensive.
More expensive.
Yeah.
Are you done with Garland's testimony?
Does anybody else have any questions for him? Then, I guess, yeah.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, you too. So, initial thoughts on what apparently was proposed in our original report from them back in the day and what he's reiterating now, with the limitations that he offered. And I can read those again if.
No, I mean, I'm not a fan of allowing more in the front yard setback. I mean, I think there's, having it built up to the sidewalk is an urban or a downtown feel, and I don't think that's what neighborhoods should necessarily feel like. So, I mean, those were lovely drawings that he showed, but that was a very different setting in Florida, and there are quite possibly places that have alleyways, and so they can put their parking behind. which we don't generally have in Milwaukie.
Do we have any alleys?
Are we ready to perhaps close the public comment and move into deliberations?
Sure, if no one has any more questions. All right. Does staff have any response to the testimony?
Oh, do we need to move to close?
No, first.
Oh, okay. Oh, got it. Okay.
I think the only thing I just wanted to point out is because we are still requiring an off-street parking space for single detached dwellings, and single detached dwellings are the dwellings that can have an ADU. So just to understand that if the notion is to allow the ADUs, the new ADUs in the front yard, like right up to the street, it would have to be a carriage house. It would have to be a carriage house design, that there would have to it would have to be a 2-story over a garage in order to accommodate that, the parking space, or it's the ADU with a driveway next to it for the parking, because we're still requiring the parking for the single detached dwelling.
Right.
We'll need to balance all of those things and understand how that's going to work. And that would affect, we do have a 40% minimum landscaping in the front yard piece, so that would be, so there are just other sections of the code.
A wildly large front yard for all that to work.
It could. I just wanted to point out that there are other sections of the code that would be affected by that. That's all. Yeah.
Okay. Does council have any more questions for staff? If there are no more questions, I will entertain a motion to close the public comments part of the Housing and Parking Code Amendments hearing.
I move to close the public comment part of the hearing on the proposed housing and parking code amendments.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public comment part of the hearing on the proposed Housing and Parking Code Amendments. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? None heard. The public comment part of the public hearing on the proposed Housing and Parking Code Amendments is closed. Is there any council discussion?
On Garland's proposal, I don't have any issue with using the driveway footprint. I think that makes pretty good sense to me, and quite a few houses in Milwaukie have pretty long driveways that could still accommodate that required parking space, even without a driveway. So I think that makes sense. I tend to agree with Councilor Beatty that I do have some reservations with that recommendation to build straight up to the sidewalk. I think that can work in certain settings, and I wonder if there might not be, and unfortunately this is a more complicated proposal, but if we wanted to think about that for our corridors or our denser areas, which isn't really code that we're getting into right now. So, but I guess I would put a pin in saying, I could see that working in those kinds of settings.
When we start talking about hubs.
Yeah. And I do worry about giving up lot coverage. Because, I mean, tree canopy coverage is great, but I think we kind of need some of that front coverage as well, just for making sure we do as much as we can to get the trees we really want, so.
There are a lot of houses, and this is just me thinking about real life examples of where, even in these now moderate density zones, we have a lot of houses that do have pretty large front yards and wide driveways with 2 car garages. And so I suppose in those situations, I don't think the impact would be, where you have a situation like that, if you were to build one of those examples that he showed on his slide, you still actually have the one car, you still have the one parking space minimum, you still have a driveway, and you actually haven't eaten up any more vegetation, potentially. So I think there are many places in the existing, not the high-density areas where something like that could be feasible.
Just clarify, I think the driveway footprint, I'm comfortable with that anywhere. That was
Even if it's right up to the sidewalk. That's my question.
I don't really want to give up that setback.
The 20-foot setback? Because that's what the front yard is.
Yeah. Or, I mean, I could see where you could give up setback such that it's still allowed for parking in the driveway. Am I making sense here? When I think about these things, I try not to open my mouth without having used paper and pen because I'm just visual.
So I'm trying to visualize what you're saying. Say you've got a 2-car driveway and a 2-car garage, and you build an ADU in front of that garage, basically you're saying.
Sure.
And that there's still room in front of that for the required parking for the single unit home behind?
Are sharing?
You're assuming the original garage. Oh, you're sharing the access way.
Perhaps you're sharing the access way. Perhaps you lose one of the parking spaces in the garage, but you still have access to one of the spaces in the garage to satisfy the minimum that's still required for the single detached dwelling. But you are encroaching into that setback. So that's the example that I'm sort of.
But, so then you would have, is that then a design?
And if you can still meet the vegetation.
Yeah. But then would you be having a house where the driveway, or where the garage is the very first thing you're seeing? Am I picturing the right thing here? Where the garage bumps out in front of the rest of the house?
Well, the carriage house or the...
Okay, so this is the carriage house. Sorry, I was trying to...
Are you thinking as a carriage house there or just an ADU?
I'm thinking about the way some of those were drawn. The ADU was where on a lot of the lots that we have existing now, it's essentially where half of that driveway and half of that garage exist. And so we're, taking away half the garage, half the driveway, replacing it with an ADU.
Thank you.
So just a straight ADU. I see.
And maybe half of the garage is, a conversion that extends into the, it's really hard not to have that example that he had drawn up there. But
Well, my take on it is that there are a number of lots in Milwaukie where the garage is on the lot line. It's not unusual, or certainly within the setback if they're not right on the lot line, right there.
I think there's quite a few in the older, like here in historic Milwaukie and some of the older neighborhoods. You don't see it that much.
You don't see it in any of the
And you go in the east side of Milwaukie.
Right. Well,
And you don't, in Island Station, we had 1 or 2, and they actually got removed when people built new houses on the property. So I can't think of one in Island Station.
I can't in Island Station either.
Yeah. I can't think of one in Island Station. But I do know there are some certainly around historic Milwaukie and, possibly other older.
Yeah, Monroe, there's some on Monroe. Yeah. I can go either way on this. I don't have strong feelings about it, one way or the other. I think with the caveats that he offered, I think it was still pretty livable, but
We could make it Desi's problem. What do you think, Desi?
I mean, if we did some of the things he had photographed, we would max out the lot coverage standard on the front half of the lot, and then the whole back would be green space, which may be okay. I mean, I don't like what it does to the pedestrian experience to have such variability between a 20-foot setback and 0 lot line thing. I mean, it's one thing for, a small 800 square foot thing. It's another if you're starting to put 2 or 3 in there, the way some of his drawings were doing. Yeah, I think it's,
On the townhomes, are we still having 20-foot setbacks on townhomes, or is it 10?
I think it was
Or is it something
maybe
smaller?
15, can't remember.
I'm trying to remember. Because if you sort of think about the classic townhomes in the cities, that there are a lot of those. They tend to be
Right
pretty
up
close
the
to the
street.
sidewalk, right? There's the home, there's the porch, there's the steps, and then it's the sidewalk.
It's 20 feet.
It is still 20 feet.
Yep.
Like I said, I don't have strong feelings.
Yeah,
I think the 3 things that we solved earlier get us where I wanted to go, but
yeah. I would be totally happy to add, within the driveway footprint, allowing for, continuing to meet other standards. It's the other 2 that I'm a little less certain about, but. And honestly, I don't know how much this is really going to come up. When I think about it,
I'm actually seeing a lot of potential, so, our opportunity. I drew a picture, it's not a very good one.
Thank you
Here's a
for.
house, it has a 2-car garage, it has a really wide driveway. If you can convert half of a garage, which might not make for a very big ADU, but in these examples, if you are able to convert half of it and then build out the other half into that driveway up to the sidewalk, you actually have a decent sized ADU and potentially something that looks like that, that also still maintains a sizable setback for the main existing single dwelling unit. And if it complies with all the other vegetation. I also don't have very strong feelings about this because I think this is a little new to our deliberations. And if we'd had a little bit more time to chew on this, I think those examples, I think we could probably illustrate that they aren't affecting the human, the interaction between, the pedestrian and the house. But I could see it working. I do see that there is potential out there for this that could actually make for a more affordable construction, potentially. So.
You must have said something.
Hi, Joseph Brulio, Community Development Director, Council. Actually, it's more of a question for Vera, but also I think will help with this conversation because if we're talking about ADUs and if we're talking about potentially converting a garage and then potentially using the footprint of the driveway, we have size constraints for ADUs. So if we took like a 2-car garage, which is roughly hits close to that maximum, right? So are we talking, I'm trying to think logically if we're actually not talking about something that probably.
I'm talking about half of the garage though.
So she was talking about a long skinny ADU that was half the garage that came out.
Okay.
And then there was a driveway beside it. And you still have
Some
one
portion
garage
of the
space.
driveway gets you
Back to the garage.
to something that looks like that. I was just thinking, how do you plop what those illustrations are into our streets, into our neighborhoods? And that's where I thought, oh, I could actually see that happening if you convert and are allowed to extend.
Gotcha. Didn't see the picture. Dang it.
It's not very good one, but there's my picture.
Are you tracking that? 'Cause
I'll give it to Scott.
There's on it.
I mean, I've always loved the carriage house look. Every neighborhood I've ever been in that has carriage houses, I think it's charming. And many of them are on the lot line. But beyond that,
Do you have some magic insights for us, Vera?
Well, I don't know about magic. I think just a couple of things. I think we're presuming that that the development would happen on a street that has sidewalks. So there is the possibility that these could be proposed on a street that doesn't have a sidewalk. We do have frontage improvements that are generally required when we add a dwelling unit, depending on proportionality and all of those things, we may not. So they almost always do require, the construction of a sidewalk, but in case there wasn't, we're just sort of thinking about this idealized situation. I just wanted to bring that up as a possibility. I think I would just want to understand is the idea of allowing for the ADU in the front yard, is it always a carriage house? Is it always two-story, or is that's an illustration that we've seen, and that's obviously fine, they're lovely. But just understand that could be a one-story ADU as well, up to the sidewalk. And I would want to I just want to take a second to look at what our design standards are for our ADUs, because they don't presume an ADU at the front, at the setback. And so just understanding, do our design standards match that street-facing kind of idea? Do we want to have minimum glazing? We don't have those kinds of standards right now. And we didn't recommend changes to that based on, if they're 20 feet back, yes, it's still a street-facing facade, that's one thing. But just understanding what should those design standards be, if any, if they are right up to the sidewalk, and I just haven't thought about that. I haven't had a chance to kind of think about that, so
I think you bring up a lot of really good points where like I said, if this had been brought up for deliberation a lot sooner, I think that we should put a pin in this, and I do think it's really worthy of a future conversation around ADUs.
Yeah.
And we also, there's a lot we should be getting into for design standards anyway, I think, even in these, there's the whole list of things that I think are geared at creating a specific aesthetic that is drawn from the way neighborhoods had previously been planned, that I think we need to get away from if we're actually going to try to accommodate some of this housing. And just and just current architecture and design. I see beautiful homes all the time in magazines and in other places that would not be allowed to be built here in the city because we have a lot of design standards that frankly reflect sort of a 1970s, 1980s typical traditional home. And so...
Who do you have against orange shag?
Nothing. I have nothing against those. It's just, but it's a time.
Yeah.
It's time to adjust those anyway.
well, and several of our design standards are not environmentally sound.
Right.
Sure.
The bay windows.
Bay windows as a perfect example.
Yeah.
So, I think you're right. And the ADU code is going to continue to evolve.
Yep.
When we first did it, it was very different than what we're producing now. And in 7 years or 10 years, people may decide that there's more opportunities there, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with where we landed already, if everyone else good there. Desi, any thoughts?
No.
Okay.
If I could, for anyone who's watching, there is always a variance option to do this. It's not easy. or free, but just wanting to point out that if someone does have a great idea, for wanting to do something like this, there is a mechanism to do it. It's not by right, but there is a way to do it, and we may learn from, what folks come up with. This will not be the last time we look at this code. I'm certain of that. So I think it's something that we can continue to evolve with, with that idea. I think it's a good one and it's worth looking at. I would like a little more time with it if it was what you wanted to pursue.
And, we haven't talked about this lately, but I assume that we'll have some reports back to council, kind of how's this going once we've implemented all of this. So we will have an opportunity and the public will see those reports, and so we'll all be learning together is, I guess, the point I'm trying to make here is this isn't going to just go into a filing cabinet somewhere.
There's no chance of that.
This is Vera's job security plan.
All right, were there any other issues that anybody had?
I mean, I have issues, but I don't think that's what you're asking.
Never mind. I'll just get myself in trouble again. Then I would entertain a motion to continue the hearing.
I move to continue the hearing on the Comprehensive Plan, Housing and Parking Code Amendments File ZA-2021-002 to a date certain of April 19th, 2022.
A second.
It has been moved and seconded to continue the hearing on the Comprehensive Plan, Housing and Parking Code Amendments, file number ZA-2021-002 to a date certain of April 19th, 2022. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. The hearing is continued to a date certain of April 19th, 2022.
Thank you, Vera.
Guess there's no gavel that goes with that. Nope. Okay. Comprehensive Plan Implementation, Tree Code Amendments, continued, and ordinance. The continued public hearing on the proposed tree code amendments, file number ZA-2021-002, is called to order. The purpose of this hearing is to receive a final update from staff, take any additional public comments, conduct a final deliberation, and continue the hearing to April 19th, when council is scheduled to adopt the code amendments. Does any council member wish to announce actual or potential conflicts of interest?
No.
No.
Nor do I. Natalie, it's all you.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Natalie Rogers. I'm the Climate and Natural Resources Manager for the city, and I'm here today to talk a little bit more about fees with tree code. I'm going to go over some of the code changes that we've made based on our last conversation last week on the 29th. And then we worked on some alternative fee structures for you all to consider, and then I am going to pass it off to you for your deliberations. First, I always want to cover, once again, if anyone in the community has tree questions, we do have resources available, Urban Forest at milwaukieoregon.gov, as well as our Urban Forest hotline at 503-786-7655. We have an urban forester on staff. Folks are welcome to call us, ask tree questions. We're happy to help. Oh, and I'm not even presenting, am I?
Oh,
Hold on there.
thank you, Natalie.
I caught it, luckily. Okay. All right. So, code updates. So there's really only a few of them that we made. The first is we heard that there is a lot of confusion around some of the terminology that we use throughout the code. It's a technical code, it's a technical subject.
However, we tried to hopefully make it a little bit more understandable by adding some diagrams and additional language in our definition section. That way folks can take a look, particularly around our diameter at breast height section, and they can actually see some graphics that represent kind of how somebody measures trees if they were just exclusively reading the code and wanting to get an understanding. As we mentioned last week, we will of course have some informational handouts. We're hoping to do things like a video and other outreach materials online for folks to be able to access and use. And then of course we are happy to help out, and if folks want to give us a call or send us an email, we can help walk them through it. The other major code change that we made was around the consensus that we heard last week around applying certain development standards when a building footprint is expanding versus when construction is being contained within an existing footprint. So we did revise the code to say essentially if you're expanding the building footprint, if you're building beyond the existing building footprint, all of the standards apply. So that's our preservation standard, our planting standard, as well as our soil volume standard and protection standard, which is protection fencing and other kind of construction, essentially best management practices to ensure that the trees on the site will be safe. But then if somebody is not expanding the building footprint, only the protection standards apply. That means that they'll just need to essentially show where certain trees are and then put up fencing to make sure that, that those trees are safe. And then we can pair that on the staff workload side by kind of pairing it with our erosion control inspections. And then we also adjusted the requirements. So when somebody is submitting all of the materials to apply, if they are just doing the latter where it's just the protection standard, they don't need an ISA arborist. They essentially just need to send us a really simple tree inventory, a map drawing, and we can also walk through that with them at the development review. So it should be fairly simple with that adjustment. I'm going to pause right here and make sure I captured everything that I heard last week, and if there was any questions, because moving forward I'm just be talking about fees. So
Can you tell me what page that's on?
Yes. Let's see.
RS 296.
296. There's a few of them. So let's see. We made revisions on RS 317. We also had revisions in RS 333. RS 336, and this is all just making sure that the application, when it's being submitted, reflects that consistent language around the different standard requirements, as well as RS 341. And you can see the additional diagrams and the RS 318 for the diameter breast height.
Yeah, I saw that. I just, it was this piece, which is 333, I guess, yeah.
I'll just note that I'm not, on RS 296, I had this labeled, you go from 1 and 2 being indented to then 3 not being indented, and number 3 is where you talk about construction that does not result in an increase of a building footprint. I'm just wondering if maybe there's no 3? Is that, there's some, yeah. Because otherwise it sounds like the sentence above where it says that this applies. Do you see where I'm getting at?
That might have just been a mistake converting the underlined strike through over to a clean copy. But I'll take a look at that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it looks like in the underlined copy it is indented, so it would be 1, 2, 3, and it just looks like that formatted funky going over.
We good? Okay.
So, yeah, great. And so I just want to just make sure, so there are no other changes so far, so when we bring it back in a couple weeks, hopefully it will look just like this, with the indent changed. Great. Okay, so fee structure. So the first thing that we did want to bring to attention, so, we together as staff were taking a look and trying to come up with different solutions, particularly on the penalty side when it came to adding in a layer of discretion beyond the judge. And actually, Joseph reminded us that there is this statement at the very beginning of the master fee schedule, which does allow the city manager to provide some discretion and adjust fees or remove them. And we figured that since this is existing language right now and all of our fees for tree code are located within the master fee schedule, this would be a good option to use in the time being. Anne has already shared that she wants to make sure things are routed to her.
She's looking forward to these.
I did just want to add in, because I had a conversation with a couple of you about this specifically. When we had the minimums that we could drop it to, it was really difficult for me actually to be in this. It actually precluded me from this section of code. So by getting rid of that minimum that we had to charge, it allows me to now apply this like I do all the other fees. So that is a part of the change. I think it's a good one. But it also requires me to tell council if I ever waive anything over $1,000. So it's also a way to keep you in the loop as we're making any changes and the reasons around those changes. Okay.
Can I make a request?
Sure.
And maybe council will agree. The he, she, his, her language is striking me as not very,
Inclusive.
Let's fix it.
Yep.
They, them would suffice. Or some other way to arrange that sentence to where you don't need it.
Yeah, and we actually should probably do a quick search on the whole budget doc, so we can do that. Good? Okay.
Thank you. Great. So for the non-development tree code, so this is for not trees associated with additional housing units or land division. So this is where the rest of the private residential tree code. This is the fee schedule that we initially proposed. I just wanted to show it so that way I'm going to be going through some alternatives, and at the very end we'll kind of show an example of some varieties of tree sizes with all of these different essentially fee schedules next to them so you can see them all together. The first is the originally proposed fee schedule. So for our type 1 tree permit, so that is essentially the tree permit if you have a dead, dying, hazardous, invasive, infrastructure impact, fire hazard, etc. tree. It's essentially free to apply and no removal fees. So we really just want to be informed and know that folks are taking down a tree for one of the reasons in our approval standards and then replanting if it's one of the requirements that require replanting. The other fee types do have a $50 application fee, and then per inch diameter at breast height, we have different kind of fee bins that you can either fall into. There's also a rare or threatened tree fee, and that's associated with a specific curated list of rare or threatened tree species that we're going to be, our urban forester, Courtney, she's working on right now, and we'll be working with the tree board, and that's also something that we can show once it's fleshed out. We do have a few species that are regionally kind of common, such as Oregon white oak, which typically fall on these, as well as other species that are on endangered, rare, or threatened species lists for both state as well as federal. So this is the next fee schedule. So this is an alternate on graduated fees. So if I just kind of flip back and forth, you can see that these fees were reduced. We still have these brackets with approximate circumferences. With the caveat, those circumferences are for single-stemmed trees. But you can see that the fees were adjusted down in cost. So that's alternative one. Alternative 2, so this is, oh, sorry, for some reason I didn't change my PowerPoint, but this is essentially $60 per inch DBH flat across every bracket of diameter. So instead of having, as you can see in past ones, where as you went up in diameter, the per inch cost increased in order to adjust for essentially the value of that tree, we kept it consistent. So this is definitely maybe more simple to talk to folks about, but we also don't see that kind of exponential curve in valuation. Another alternate is kind of flat fees. So this would be kind of bins of costs. So if you have a fee with a diameter that fits into one of these bins, no matter if it's different by an inch or 2 inches, as long as it fits within the, say, the 12 to less than 18 inch diameter range, you're going to be paying a flat fee of $1,000. Until you get up to 36 inches or greater, which is our significantly larger trees, and that's when the per inch DBH kicks in. So this is kind of a comparison of all those costs with a variety of different diameters. You can see on the very left, we have the original proposed removal fee, and it increases in cost as you go down, pretty much kind of as a slight exponential scale. Alternate 1 is just essentially the same principle, except it's lower fees. Alternate 2 is the $60 per diameter. And then alternate 3 are those flat fees. And so I'm going to pause here just so y'all can take a little time to look at it and ask any questions if you have them.
So that's I mean, do we have caps? Are you saying those numbers are caps, or you're positing the minimum tree, like that 9,000 is a 40-inch tree?
That 9,000 would be a 40-inch tree. So on the size, that's as if somebody was submitting an application to remove a tree of that size. And then each row would be an individual tree.
So these are fees for trees that are removed
that do not fit our type 1 standards. So these are the elected removals. So these would be fees for those type 2 permits. So say somebody has a tree in their front yard, it's a healthy tree, but they want to remove it to plant a garden, or they don't like maybe the way that it matches with the aesthetic of their home, or they are uncomfortable with it being in their front yard. These would be the elected removal fees. Once again, the type 1 permits cover things like hazardous trees, dead, dying, diseased, so that would be no cost.
And the first 6 to 12, seems like, I mean, we're allowing them to remove one of those trees every year, right?
Correct.
So we're probably not going to have that many in that category.
This would be if somebody, say, wanted to remove 2 trees at the same time. The first, on our type 1 approval standards, folks do get to remove one healthy tree under 12 inches per 12 months. So really, if they wanted to remove 2 trees under 12 inches, they could time it such that they do 1 tree removal every 12 months, and then they would pay no fees. Or they can opt to do both removals at the same time and choose to pay a permit fee for 1 healthy tree removal.
And this has nothing to do with the fines that people pay if they cut a tree without a permit.
Correct. Yeah, we'll show you those, and we have some different options for that as well. But for this, it is simply if you're filling out a permit for an elected removal of a tree.
So I guess I have a alternate 4 to throw out there, which would be, I mean, I'm concerned about the biggest trees. I think would be like the flat fee up through 18 inches or maybe 24 inches, and then an escalating fee and a graduated fee for the bigger trees.
So 1 flat fee for any tree that's under 24 inches?
Yeah, that doesn't qualify as the that doesn't qualify as the rare or threatened. Yeah.
And just to clarify, do you mean a flat fee such as $60 per DBH or a flat fee as an alternate?
Oh, no, I meant the $60 per, well, I mean, I'd be open to either one, I guess, but I was thinking the $60 per DBH, and then have at 24 inches, then have that start being more per DBH, per.
If I could add, one of the things that we were trying to do with this fee structure, and we're trying to provide some balance between the development side and the non-development side, with the idea that there's this need to make sure that sites are developable, that we aren't charging exorbitant fees for development sites, that that we can build more affordable housing, right? So we're trying to set up that development structure to do that. And then on the non-residential side, we were trying to recognize the desire of some to protect the larger trees, have for those selective removers, or should I say elective removals. But then at the same time, make it that it's not overly exorbitant. We heard what the council was saying last week. It wasn't overly exorbitant and cost prohibitive for somebody to remove a tree on their property. That, when you compared the cost of removing a single tree versus the development cost, that there was some balance there. And I think we have a slide that goes through that and shows that there's we're trying to balance those things.
So maybe if I may, I'll show you how this compares to the development fees that we've proposed. And then after that, we can pause and then maybe have a discussion around the permit fees before we talk a little bit more about the enforcement fees. So I wanted to bring back this example. Once again, this is illustrative. No one take a ruler to it. So we have this example of a site that's 10,000 square feet. And they are going to add an addition or a duplex or something that Vera will probably correct me on. And they are opting to remove trees number 3 and number 4. So in this situation, the way that we look at the development tree code is we say, all right, if you remove below 30% canopy within one of these different tiers, the further you go down in tiers, we have these flat fees that get imposed. So in this situation, they're going from about 35% canopy down to 17% canopy. That would bring them down 2 tiers, so that's $8,000 in mitigation for the preservation standard. So then we were wondering, okay, well, what if somebody were wanting to remove these trees not in a development situation, to make sure that a developer and a non-developer would be paying, what is that relationship in cost? So using all of the different options that we just showed you, we kind of ran the numbers. And no matter what, it comes out that the development would actually pay the most fees, even with the current proposed tree code. And this is for, you can see 8-inch, 10-inch, 14-inch, 15-inch, 13-inch trees. If a homeowner opted to remove all of the trees on their site, they would still be paying less than the mitigation in this example that the developer would be paying. So the developer definitely in this situation has a higher mitigation fee imposed in order to hopefully influence them to choose to save a tree. Of course, as we start to look at higher DBH trees, that's when, we start to get in this numbers game of which option do we want to choose. And I also have a slide that shows some of that, but it's very much site-specific, situational on what size trees you have on your site. Hopefully folks aren't going through and choosing to remove every single tree on their site. But definitely if you have a 45-inch diameter tree, with any of the fee schedules that we've posed, except perhaps maybe the flat fee binned one, it's going to increase in cost because it's just a large diameter tree.
So I want to throw you a curveball. I'm sorry. And it occurred to me when I was looking at the two, the development one and the homeowner one, sort of side by side today, and I paint a scenario, right? At a 2-acre lot that's completely treed, like the one we had on King Road, right? So 100% canopy. Next door to it is a normal 10,000 square foot lot, which is also completely treed other than where the house is. So let's say it's got a 70% tree cover. The developer who wants to come into that 2-acre lot can now cut down 60% of the trees on that lot and pay nothing.
Correct?
And if the guy next door wanted to cut down one 30-inch tree, still has his 40% canopy, he's now paying whatever we land on, let's call it $8,000.
If they dipped below that 30% mitigation kind of threshold, then yes, they would need to pay mitigation.
In a non-development.
The non-development guy, even though he has 70% canopy and he's taking one tree that still doesn't push him below 40%, he's paying a bunch of money for that tree, and the developer who just took a whole bunch of trees is paying nothing. So, you know, there's two ends of the spectrum that if we said, okay, that seems problematic, there's two ends of the spectrum. One, we could put a price of some kind on trees on the development side. The other end of the spectrum is we could say, okay, a homeowner that still has to keep their 40%, as long as they've kept their 40%, they're still okay. Or we could meet in the middle, which is kind of what I'm thinking about. And the idea that I'm thinking about is because knowing developers and how they function, they're going to go in, they're going to draw their picture on paper, and they're going to say, this is what we want to do. Okay, so we can probably keep this tree and this tree and this tree and this tree and this tree. We don't care that those are the 5 crappiest trees on the whole property. That fits with our little plan that we drew on a piece of paper. But let's say 4 of those trees that they're cutting down are incredible oaks, and they could go in there, save the oaks, redesign, build around it, but they need an incentive to do that. So what I'm thinking is if we put some kind of price structure that incentivizes keeping the best trees and doing your planning around that on the development side, and if you do have a well-treed lot that you have your house on, and you, for whatever reason, you're gonna do a garden, whatever, you wanna take down a tree, that there's some kind of percentage reduction or something because you still have your 40% canopy on your lot.
Well, we do provide an incentive to developers to preserve significant trees. So, you know, based on the size, the diameter of the tree, there are credits that apply towards both the canopy and the planting back standard. And Natalie's got, on the slide that we show that, it's based on the diameter.
What page is that on?
So this is within the master fee schedule, and
There's some language in the code though, too, right?
For the significant tree credit. And, you know, I think this is something that, thank you. This is something that, when we were just talking about the foundations of tree code and how we're going to be measuring this, tree board was grappling with, staff was grappling with. One thing that I will say is tree canopy percentages are on the presumption that somebody is doing a full inventory of all of the trees on their property in order to get us that tree canopy. And so if we did have something, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, if we did have something, we would have to require homeowners to go and inventory all of the trees on their property in order to get us that percentage. And then, you know, we do try to, you know, I think that was part of the nature of developing this tree code with the housing code, is trying to work particularly on the development side to be flexible and allow for some sites to remove more trees in order to theoretically build more housing. And I think we definitely have been talking internally that there's some sites that one tree is going to make a big difference, and some sites where one tree is not going to make a difference. And I think I even showed that at the very beginning in our when I talked about preservation standard and pulling out some aerial imagery of a 90% canopied site that can remove a whole lot of trees before they're paying mitigation. And that's just kind of the nature of having nature, unfortunately, and trying to figure out metrics associated with it.
So within the code on RS 296 and 297, in paragraph B, the third paragraph down, healthy trees with a DBH of 12 or greater may receive additional canopy credits for existing tree crown, as defined in the master fee schedule. And then on 297, in just above paragraph, and it's in number 3 there, the bottom part of that paragraph, healthy trees with DBH of 12-inch or greater may receive additional canopy credits for existing or future mature crown area to be factored into preservation calculations as defined in the master fee schedule. So we provide for those credits in that master fee schedule.
Healthy trees with a DBH of 12 inches or greater. So does the credit increase as the...
Yep. So between 12 to 20, you get 125% of the existing or future canopy. Trees greater than 20, up to 20 to 36 inches, it's 150%. And then greater than 36%, it's 175%. So in this case here, on the example here, the 3 trees where we're applying, they receive 125% credit because they're between that 12 to 20% DBH.
I mean, I think this is a little bit of the ADU code again. This is our first time out of the gate, even more so with this code than with the ADU code. It will be an iterative process. We don't know what we're going to get right and wrong.
The difference is, with an ADU code, you can come along and build that new ADU, and it's a brand new ADU, and it's right there.
Sure.
And if you cut down all the trees, they're not going to be there for another 100 years.
Yes, but I think we've done some things that at least ensure we're not cutting down all of the trees. And fine-tuning it is going to take work.
I just want to point out that we're still in the staff presentation and questions.
Thank you.
You guys have lobbed a few proposals and I've let them fly. It's okay. I realize this is kind of tricky, but let's let Natalie get through her stuff and please be ready to deliberate. Okay. So as soon as Kathy faced right to Mark and started talking, I was like, that's it.
Okay. So yeah, so just, you can see here the different fee schedules that we talked about today and how it relates to that final kind of, in this situation or in this specific example, what the developer would be paying. Okay, and then so enforcement fee, so this is if the permit was not obtained and the tree was removed. And we've talked about, you know, these are the fees that Anne has now ability to reduce or waive, and after informing council, and also, of course, the judge, which we've discussed, may not be a great option, but it is there and it exists. This is what we proposed. This is,
well, so I just want to, I'm trying to remember if you did ask for permission, let's just pick a tree, a 24-inch tree, and you asked for permission, depending on which variety of the new options, but let's go to the most expensive of the new options. Was it 200?
Of the new options?
So 24-inch tree. So
Depends what DBH you're talking
So this
So
is,
that's 200 per inch, that's the same.
yes, so here's the thing. The whole, it's better to ask for forgiveness and permission if it's the same price either way, and they think maybe nobody will turn me in.
So, to address that, we proposed this. So for an unpermitted private tree removal for non-development, this would be depending on what schedule you decide to adopt. The enforcement fee, we wouldn't require them to go get a retroactive permit. Staff, we would do it ourselves. So this essentially covers their permit cost, would just be simply 2 times the permit cost of what they would have had to get. And so that way, if it would have been $1,000, instead of going through the process of making them do the enforcement fee as well as a retroactive permit and do a permit fee that way, it's just, they do 2 times the permit cost, so that would have been $2,000, and then staff would submit
The permit cost is pennies compared to the cost to cut a big tree in either instance, and that's the concern I have, right? So if it's gonna cost me $8,000, if I go in and get a permit and it's gonna cost me $8,000 to cut down my oak tree, and it's only gonna cost me $8,100 if I get caught, I might take that gamble.
Well, in this situation, for the non-development, in that particular example, it would cost $16,000.
So it doubles everything.
It doubles everything.
Okay, I was just hearing you were doubling the
Oh, no,
fee.
no, we're just, for a
Okay.
simpler example, simpler for everyone, it's just double.
Got it. Doubling everything. That works.
And to clarify, but to also clarify, so in the previous iteration of the code, before we removed the minimum fine, the minimum language in the enforcement piece, that included the $50 cost of the permit, the removal fee, and the enforcement fee. So it was like all 3 of those fees were combined. So here it would just be either 2 times the permit cost or as another alternative, 1.5 times the permit cost.
I'm going to raise my hand and make a comment. I think this is our 5th meeting talking about the code. And you all have done great work. I think we're there, or we're as close as we're probably going to get. The way that the staff has come up with a process for me to inform you when I'm making a decision about reducing it, and I appreciate that Natalie has talked about this on the enforcement fee, but I actually can do it on the application fee too. So if a family comes in and they somehow don't qualify under whatever our standards or stipulations are, but I feel like there is actually a need, I can make that decision and I can email you. I still have to email you. I have to be clear about and transparent about what I'm doing. But I think we have enough leeway to be able to see what works, to see if we're close enough or if we need to come back and reconfigure the fee schedule. I'm not saying we can't complete this. I'm not saying you can't keep talking about this tonight. I fully support you doing that. But if you wanted, an alternative is, you can keep the existing structure. You can ask me to bring this back in, say, 8 months or 6 months or something, and we can rediscuss it, or you can tell me to stop talking. But it is 9:20, and the conversation's starting to get circular, too. So I just wanted to put it out there that there's more ways for me to impact this now, but with full transparency to the council to kind of gut check me than we had when we talked about this last time and when we were trying to find the structure last time. Does that make sense? Okay.
Plus, I guess we still have a public comment period.
We still have a public comment period, and we still have, this needs to be back on the agenda on the 19th for a vote. And one of the things that I'm also seeing is we're starting to stack up other projects. As you all know, we're now doing a study session next week that's actually 3 meetings in one because we're just running out of space. So it's an incredibly complex structure. I think it is incredible work that the tree board and that this team has created for you all. I appreciate they found some middle ground to help you all achieve what I think is your help Milwaukeeans be able to afford to stay in Milwaukee while simultaneously protect trees, right? I think that's the delicate dance we're trying to do. You all can, I support whatever you decide to do tonight, but I just wanted to put out there that I'm not sure that more conversations are going to lead to more clarity. And I don't know if we know the answers to your questions right now, because we haven't actually played it out. And so it's really hard for us to we don't know what we don't know yet. We don't know how people will try and get around rules or what will feel like too much yet.
Are there any other questions on this proposed fee schedule? We did denote at the very top, some of these are related to the development situations in particular versus the simpler non-development below. And I think that's all I had.
You mean I missed it by like 30 seconds? I'm really sorry.
It was still a great speech.
5 minutes.
Just in time.
I'm really sorry, Natalie. I thought we were at the end, but okay.
Can you leave the comparative, the 4 different varieties? There you go, that. Thank you. All right. Have we received any additional correspondence on the topic?
Nope.
Does anyone wish to comment on the amendments to the tree code?
There is a hand raised in Zoom, Mr. Mayor. I'll double check the inbox while I'm doing that.
I will read the thing. The council will now take public testimony on the proposed amendments to the code. I will recognize speakers and any questions should be addressed through me. When you begin to speak, state your name and city residence for the record. For those who wish to testify, you may submit written comments by email to ocr@milwaukeeoregon.gov. Staff will read those comments out loud. For those who wish to testify in Zoom, please raise your hand. For those participating in the Zoom webinar by phone, to make a comment, dial *9 to raise your hand. Presentation times for all speakers will be limited. Representatives of groups will be limited to 10 minutes. Individuals will be limited to 3 minutes. Please confine your remarks to the proposed action, avoid repetition and irrelevant information.
Okay. We have an Anthony Allen who'd like to speak, and I'm going to promote them to the panel. So, Mr. Allen, if you can accept that invitation to join the panel. And actually, for this part, Natalie, it might help if you can stop sharing. And Mr. Allen, if you can hear us, it looks like you're unmuted. You can go ahead and speak.
Yes. Good afternoon. Good evening. I have a question. If I'm not mistaken, the proposed code allows the city to deny a permit for certain trees. I'm still unsure of what the parameters of that, for that denial. I haven't been able to find that anywhere in the proposal, but I do remember seeing that the city is allowed to tell a homeowner that they're not allowed to cut a tree. Does the proposed code also have that ability to deny developers to not allow them to cut down certain trees on a proposed development lot? And that's my question.
Okay. Go ahead and answer it, please.
So the current code on the non-development section does allow for the city to deny a type 2 removal. However, it may be appealed to the city manager.
And what would you base that type 2?
The approval standards are located on RS 327, starting at the bottom. And so these are the approval standards, and our type 2 approval standards fit something fairly similar to that. I'm trying to, sorry, I'm like looking over Peter's, I'm trying to find this, but you can see the approval standards for our type 2s and 1s are under RS 327, 328. it's more discretionary, so they can work with the urban forester to kind of talk about what's going on, what's the removal, and then that's why we do have the mitigation fees. Oh. Sorry, come on. Okay, so, yep, there's also RS 344. Is that what we're looking at?
It should be starting on RS 344 through 346 are the...
Is what, the development section?
So this would be for, starting on RS 344, that's non-development tree permit requirements. And that starts listing all of our approvals.
And was I'm sorry, on my packet, I was seeing 327 was actually the public tree? So
Yeah,
that was
sorry,
not...
that was incorrect.
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
I guess what I'm not sure if you answered it or not, so I'll just ask. Does that mean that you have that ability to tell a developer they can't cut certain trees down on that lot?
Yes, so that's part of the essentially report that they have to submit, is they show us and they work with the urban forester to essentially show which trees that they are removing. And then they would have to pay mitigation if they can't make it factor out. There are certain inventories that we'll be working on, and the rare and threatened DBH cost does apply as well. However, I believe we cannot tell them that they can't remove a particular tree in a development situation if it impedes the development of housing. Isn't that right? Isn't that Luba?
Well,
but you can actually tell a homeowner that they can't cut a tree down. You do have that ability.
Correct, because it's not associated with the development of additional housing units or subdivision of land for the construction of housing.
Okay, that did answer my, I have problems with that, but you did answer the question. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see no other hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
You see no other hands raised? So to continue that, to flesh out that question, I mean, I'm scanning through this, but what are the instances in which you might tell a homeowner that they couldn't cut down a tree?
So if you look on RS 347, we have situations, we frame it as approval standards. So whether the species of tree is appropriate for its location, whether the species of tree is an invasive species, crown, stem, root growth is developed in a manner that prevents continued healthy growth. Maintenance of the tree creates an unreasonable burden. The removal will significantly affect public safety. So those are, the city will not issue a type 2 permit for the removal of a healthy functioning tree without a demonstration by the applicant that extraordinary circumstances exist. So because our non-development tree code is not related to the construction of housing, I believe we can be more discretionary than in our development tree code, where we have to have clear and objective standards on when and why a developer can remove a tree. I'm sorry, I keep staring at you, just being like.
That's correct. That's a very succinct way to say it. That's correct.
So, because otherwise we would risk a takings, that whole.
It's actually the state.
Is that needed housing thing?
Yeah, it's not necessarily a takings analysis, but that's why we've adopted standards that are clear and objective to guide what a developer is allowed to take down, what they'll have to preserve when they construct their buildings. When we get into discretionary things, it complicates things with regards to the needed housing statutes that we've seen pop up here in other contexts.
So we understand why it's happening on the development side. On the homeowner side, so even if they're willing to pay the $8,000 or whatever it is for the particular tree, and let's say they just want to plant a garden, that's what they do. They have a 70% tree cover, they have a house on the other 30%, they would like a little sunlight for a garden, so they're gonna cut down a tree or 2 trees, and they're willing to pay the $8,000, they could still be denied.
They could be denied at the urban forester level, and then they could appeal to the city manager. And that's the process that we have for appeals.
Right now, the appeal to the city manager is a catch-all to allow us to have some determination, again, where I have to inform the council, since it's your intention that I'm supposed to be living up to on the code. I did also just want to call out that Councilor Nicodemus is going to be excused for the remainder of the meeting. Thanks.
Okay. I can see why that would rankle.
Can we move to the next section?
Well, so do we need to close the public testimony
If we don't have any
if
more.
we don't have any?
Correct.
Okay.
Does staff have any response to the testimony?
Yeah, do you have any response to the testimony, or do you have any further questions?
We do have another hand raised.
You do have another hand raised?
Anthony Allen's raised his hand again.
Same guy?
We used quite a bit more than 3 minutes.
Well, that wasn't him talking, that was us backing and forthing. He didn't talk for 5 minutes. I'm gonna allow it.
Mr. Allen, you should be able to back on again.
Thank you for allowing the additional comment. This is just based on what I heard from the city manager and the Natalie. I have a lot of hesitation when you say that it can be denied by for whatever reason, but it can be appealed to the city manager. I'm gonna state this. I would be surprised if those two did not back each other up. So I feel to say that there's an appeal process. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that probably a lot of people, if there's a lot of people, if there's anyone who would appeal, I have questions on whether or not it would be fair. I'd like that to be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any response, staff?
I move to close the public comment part of the hearing on the proposed tree code amendments.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public comment part of the hearing on the proposed tree code amendments. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The public comment part of the public hearing on the proposed tree code amendments is closed. Is there any council discussion?
Yes. Could we get that slide back up? I will say that I am most comfortable with alternate number 2. We're all real tired, so I don't know that I have a whole lot of fight in me, but I do feel like that's a lot of money for your average homeowner in Milwaukie, I think. Particularly if you are adding onto it, having a certified arborist come and take down a tree. And I do want this to be something that makes people give pause. I really do. I do want to protect our trees. But I look at that and that feels like a fair amount of money to me. So that's what I got to say. And if we need to talk about whether or not that's adequate protection for larger diameter trees, I'm happy to talk about it. I appreciate that we've got something coming for our the particular species. I appreciate that that's problematic to implement. I'm sorry. Hopefully we can figure something out and we try it. I mean, so much of this is really, we are trying a lot of new things in this code. So I want to be real clear to the public. This is an experiment. But those are my thoughts.
So I will say that under alternative 2, let's put aside the first 2, the up through 12 inches where people conceivably, might be able to, it depends on the tree, and where it is and how close it's to their house and everything else, but people might be able to remove some of those on their own. But as you get into the larger trees, the cost of the arborist removing the tree is going to be higher than those costs. I've had arborist work done in big trees. And my neighbors had a tree that split in the windstorm in 2020. And I think it cost them about $8,000 to remove the tree. To me, those are too low. Certainly, as you get to bigger trees, they're too low. I might be okay with them on the smaller trees.
I do want to chime in just to mention that, just for folks listening, we don't require certified arborists for removals for these trees. I just wanted to, just in case anyone's listening.
Would you, I might be confusing a couple different things, but on alternate 2, I mean, it sounded like, Council President Heisey, there's a separate and distinct level though for the rare and threatened trees. So this is, right, okay. I just wanted to make sure that even though we're talking about an alternate 2, it still incorporates.
That was my understanding.
Yeah, okay.
And you're saying that Oregon white oaks are on the rare and threatened?
Correct. As it's currently drafted, yes.
I will say that I do think that the levels are appropriate until we get to the very large tree. That's where I actually find, I'm comfortable with alternate 2. But I do think that a 40-inch tree is significant enough that there might be a threshold at which we say, okay, the dollar amount needs to be higher. I'm not sure where it is. I don't think it's as low as 24. But somewhere on that line, we might want to consider that the size could be significant enough to warrant something a little more than what's on that scale.
So would you be willing to go from, so let's call it 27 inches, go alternate 2 until 27 inches, and then go over to alternate 1?
I'm sorry,
From
I
there
said
down.
40 inch, I didn't say 27 inch.
You said
saying for the last
you said it wouldn't be 24, so I went the next one.
Yeah.
So 30, I don't care, whatever.
You said to alternate 1?
So go, if the bottom half was in alternate 2, and then the top
Top half is in alternate 2, the bottom after, you're saying after 27
the
inch.
bigger trees are in alternate 1.
$30 inch.
30 inch?
That.
I think that's more, we just think in tens. So 30 inch is going to be easier for folks to wrap their heads around versus 27 inch.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay, I can live with that.
It's kind of a thumbs up maybe for what I'm hearing is 6 inches to 30 inch, under 30 inch DBH, so 29.99999 would be alternate 2. 30 inches and above would be alternate 1 as proposed.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, as you see here.
The original proposal, the left-hand column, right?
No, I was thinking, we were talking about
Alternate
one.
one. Well, either one, they're kind of pretty similar, other than there's a bigger jump at 40.
And you can see this broken out in the master fee schedule too, or I could flip it back to the.
I can go either way. I don't have strong feelings between those two.
Yeah, I mean, it's better than going alternate 2 all the way. I would go for the original levels. I would go for the higher ones, but I mean, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Okay.
And recognizing that we're giving a lot of, authority to our city manager, who will be compelled to hear the stories of our residents
Right.
and understand their circumstances. I mean, because I see those numbers and it still gives me a lot of pause, because we are talking about families who could never afford that.
Right.
So I want to make sure that they know that we hear them. It's very important to me.
So then 2 other questions. One was the one that the caller brought up of there being a potential to just be told straight up, no, you can't cut that tree. Period. Even if you're willing to pay the $8,000.
I mean, frankly, that person then will, pay a fine as well.
Probably.
So, I mean, I think our code, they're not approval criteria, but they are review standards, and there's a whole lot of time and words dedicated to this code that I don't see that happening. I think, essentially the decision maker would have to, whether it's the forester or Ann, would have to say, I'm ignoring the code. I just don't want to approve your permit. That isn't going to happen.
Okay.
It's really important that we recognize the difference between, especially when we compare it to the development, not for just the legal reasons, but, we do need to accommodate more housing in the city, regardless of what is allowed, because it's a land use approval process. There's a pretty big difference between removing trees for non-development and removing trees for the development of needed housing in our community.
So then the question that I brought up, and I'm going to ask it in 2 parts because it really is 2 parts. One, do we think the incentives on the developer side to keep the bigger trees are sufficient that it will drive those kinds of decisions? And not just however they want to lay out their subdivision or their cottage cluster or their whatever?
I think, I was just going to say, we hope so. I mean, we're going to be able to sort of analyze it with the data that we get and see what happens with sites. And if, we'll be able to track and see how developers respond to that incentive. And, one of the benefits of having it in the master fee schedule, we can come back to you at any time and say, hey, we're not seeing this being, this incentive, enough of incentive, and we want to make an adjustment, so.
Yeah, in my mind, when I put those caveats out there about this is going to be an iterative process, that's the place where I see the most potential for iteration. I think we'll either it is or it isn't, and we'll know within the next year, maybe sooner than that, next 6 months, whether or not it's giving developers pause and causing them to save trees we want them to save.
Okay. So that's that half. The other half is the homeowner that has a very well-treed lot. and they want to remove a tree, which they'll still be well above the 40% tree canopy on their lot? Or are we still going to charge the exact same thing as we would if the removal of that tree is going to drop them well below 40%, even though that's the standard by which we measure the developers doing it or not doing it?
On the non-development side, we're looking at individual trees. We're not
Right.
looking at canopy.
Yeah.
So
Right, but the fact remains that,
That is one thing that we're hoping that we can actually track pretty well with our asset management system. So as these permits come in, we're going to be tracking which properties are essentially, because we need to make sure, for example, even around our type 1 permits, 1 permit per 12 months. There are, it's not an insignificant amount of work for someone to go out and inventory all of their trees, particularly on a well-treed lot, and determine total canopy coverage. We do have rough estimates via GIS that we can do some number crunching in 6 months or so after implementing this. And hopefully we can come to you to show who's removing trees, what type of properties are removing trees, what's the overall canopy of those properties removing trees. And maybe that's a great time to ask this question again to see if some folks are being disproportionately burdened and other folks are not. But without data, I can't say who's going to be applying for permits more than others.
And I was concerned about that when you initially brought it up, but now that we've settled on a much lower fee schedule, I'm less concerned about that, I guess. Yeah.
okay. Any other changes or?
we do need to get some consensus on the enforcement piece, 1.5 times or 2 times the permit fee.
So, like we mentioned before, we're kind of moving to a simpler approach where for the enforcement fee, we could do a multiplier of what that permit would have cost anyways. So we have here in the table 2 times the permit cost. Another alternate would be 1.5 times the permit cost, which would overall be lower.
I think we should start at 2, and Anne can always lower it, but I do think that's the way to address the, asking for, I'm just going to cut it and hope nobody catches me.
So one of the things I do just want to add on that, we may be back here sooner depending on how many applications I get. Sorry. I just wanted to make sure I was really clear. One of the things Natalie was concerned about, and I just want to be transparent with you all, is that we're going to get a lot of applications, and the higher the rate is, the more likely it is that we're going to get those applications that come to me. I'm great with that for right now, and I'm great having it be a 3-month thing. I just wanted you to be prepared that I may be back sooner than later if this becomes something that's overtaking my workload.
Yeah.
Okay.
We also have, there might be an additional opportunity for the tree board to have more conversations about this aspect as well. I won't say anything more about that. I don't want to introduce any more potential things to deliberate on that aren't associated with this and germane, but I think, there could be some potential there to at least allow the public some more opportunity to engage on enforcement.
So.
And alleviate some of the need for you to weigh in every single time.
No, and I hear that. I think part of my concern has been what has become very apparent to me in these 2 code packages is that it is my job actually to balance what you all did over the last 5 days, or 5 meetings, which is to take the housing goal that you have spent so much time on and to take this tree code and to try and make sure it implements in a way that actually gets us to both outcomes. So that is my only caution about actually taking it away from the seat has been, I think you all have charged me with being responsible on both sides of that table. And not all of our boards have that charge on both sides of the table. So that's been my caution, but I will never complain about having workload reduced for me either. So we can look at it as we get closer, but that is why I have been inserting myself in that way.
So we're good with 2 times until, look at it again.
Could be a really big bill. Please educate.
Yes, yeah, that is so crucial for all of this,
If you all adopt on the 19th, I will be at the farmer's market on May 22nd to make sure everyone knows. I'm one of the first farmer's market booth tables, and we're going to be like the town crier out there.
Well, I hope it's going to be in the May pilot too,
I still want magnets.
Hey,
all the
working
things.
on
Magnets with the phone number.
And I also just want to remind everyone, we're going to vote on this at the 19th meeting. We are missing a council member who has some very strong feelings also on costs and impacts on families. So we will come back with what we proposed here, but because he's going to watch this, and I want to make sure he knows, it is all changeable based on his input as well, so we'll probably need to have more time to talk about this with him present. But we don't need to talk about it more tonight, I promise.
Okay. Then I would entertain a motion.
I move to continue the
Sorry. No, I was just checking in.
I move to continue the hearing on the comprehensive plan tree code amendments file number ZA-2021-002 to a date certain of April 19th, 2022.
I second.
It has been moved and seconded to continue the hearing on the comprehensive plan tree code amendments, file number ZA-2021-002 to a date certain of April 19th, 2022. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The hearing on the comprehensive plan tree code is continued until April 19th, 2022.
And Mayor, we'll need you to open the fee one and then close it and continue it to the 19th as well. We did all of that as a part of the tree code.
Alrighty then. Master fee schedule revision tree code fees, a resolution. The continued public hearing on the proposed tree code revisions is called to order. The purpose of this hearing is to receive an update from staff, take public comments, conduct a final deliberation, and continue the hearing until April 19th. Does any council member wish to announce an actual or potential conflict?
Does he need to do all this? We can just continue.
Just continue it.
Just continue. Okay.
Cool.
So I move to continue the hearing on the proposed tree code fee revisions to a date certain of April 19th, 2022.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to continue the hearing on the proposed tree code fee revisions to a date certain of April 19th, 2022. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. The hearing on the proposed tree code fee revisions is continued until April 19th, 2022. Well done. Thank you.
Mayor, do you mind taking on Kelly's letter?
Yes, we have that on our list here. So you all got an email from Kelly somewhere in the last couple of days talking about support for potential federal money for the hillside development. It's pure upside. If we get more money for the development, that means more of the development can be affordable and less of it has to be market rate in order to make it pencil. I did a version that was in a hurry-up mode that went to the senators because their decision point apparently was earlier. This would go to Congressman Schrader, but I thought it would be probably more effective if that came from the Milwaukie City Council instead of from me personally. Don't know why.
Don't know why.
The gut.
Any concerns with us having you all as the full signature block? Okay, thank you.
The letter looks good.
Awesome. Then in that case, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.